Emily Smith was in front of the mirror, trying on a little lace headscarf. I wondered if I could let my hair hang down my back and let it hang loosely. Would that be okay? Or is it better to put it in a bundle? The girl was a little nervous, because for the first time in her life she was going to participate in the baptismal ceremony. But she didn't know how to behave during this sacred act. Sarah invited Emily to become godmother to her son. 2 years ago, this old friend had married Jason, a wealthy young businessman who couldn't resist her beauty, a simple bookkeeper from the neighborhood children's library. He fell head over heels in love with Sarah. The couple quickly got married, and recently a friend gave birth to her husband's son Tommy, a wonderful boy, whose godmother was to be Emily, as godfather was invited an old friend of their family, Benjamin. The man was flattered by Jason and Sarah's proposal, so he gladly agreed. They really hoped that Benjamin, who had a lot of experience in this, would tell the girl what to do. The man was already godfather to 3 children of his close friends. Having finally settled on an elegant closed dress with long sleeves and a high hairstyle, which Emily planned to hide under a neat kerchief, the girl left her reflection with satisfaction. Okay, Emily nodded and took one last meticulous look at herself from head to toe. I'm sure the godmother will manage her duties somehow. Anyway, I don't have a long dress, so I'll have to go in this one. The girl picked up her small purse and hurried outside, where her favorite fiancé Ryan was already waiting for her. Well, my fairy godmother, are you ready? He jokingly asked Emily and kissed her on the tip of her nose. I hope more yes than no, Emily replied with a funny face and smiled softly at Ryan. She was madly in love with her boyfriend. I feel like everyone will see my knees shaking at the ceremony. I'm nervous. Don't worry, Ryan reassured her and put his arm around her waist. Somehow I'm 250% sure you'll make a great godmother. Really? Emily looked at her lover with slight disbelief. Or are you just trying to tease me? You know, Ryan, sometimes I don't know when you're being serious and when you're joking. Emily sighed, and Ryan turned her around to face him and took her lightly by the shoulders. I'm absolutely serious about this. Emily, listen to me. Look me straight in the eye. You'll see. Tommy won't even cry in your arms. Do you believe me? Emily was confused, and then she fluttered her long eyelashes a few times and brightened her smile. Yes, I do. Good, Ryan nodded. Let's hurry up or Sarah's going to start calling you. You said yourself that she likes to be in control. We don't want to get out of her schedule. The young people got into a cab and drove to the temple where the ceremony was to take place. Emily was 26 years old and Ryan was a little older. He turned 28 this year. Guy and girl were very much in love with each other and were planning to get married soon. Emily worked as a nurse in a private clinic and really loved her job. The girl believed that she could not help people. Such a merciful character she had. In addition, she sincerely believed that the ability to medicine passed to her directly from her birth mother. Julia Smith for 30 years worked as a therapist in one of the city clinics, and just like her daughter, sincerely loved her work. Emily's family was ordinary, but very friendly. The parents of the girl always supported each other and never quarreled even over trifles. Emily sometimes even marveled at how they managed to solve all the most difficult situations peacefully. For all their mutual love, they were so different. Emily's father, Henry Smith, had worked as a truck driver for many years, until 1 year ago, on a fateful fall night, he was in a terrible accident, which made the 56-year-old man, recently full of strength and health, wheelchair-bound. Even though the doctors at the time told him and his mother that it was a miracle that their husband and father survived such a car accident. The truck slid along the unstable wet road for a few dozen meters before hitting the iron breaker and collapsing into the ditch. This was little consolation to the father of the family, however, for Smitzer had completely lost sensation in his legs, and, as a consequence, the ability to walk. You just don't give up hope, the doctor warned them then, and Henry, not all is lost yet. There are specialists in our city who can perform the appropriate surgery. Then the chances of your spouse's recovery will greatly increase. But you see, such a complicated operation will cost money. Frankly, I tell you, a lot of money. Julia and Emily herself were terribly upset. The sum named by her father's physician was simply unaffordable for them at that time. Henry himself, however, had no intention of giving up without a fight. It's okay. Now I'll pass the medical examination, I'll get a pension, and then we'll do what all honest people do, save up. God willing, in a year or two we will collect the necessary amount. The women then supported the cheerful mood of their man, but it did not last long. The further they went on, the clearer it became that they were unlikely to be able to save so much money. Deep down, all the members of the Smith family realized that the operation was probably doomed to failure. but nevertheless, none of them dared to say it out loud. They just did their work and hoped that the personal money they had saved would be enough for at least part of the operation, and they wanted to pay for the other half by taking out a loan. When Emily managed to get a job as a nurse at a private medical center, her mood improved. The pay was better than in the city hospitals, and the working conditions were much better. For the first time, the young nurse began to think that they might be able to raise most of the money for her father's surgery on their own, without the help of a bank. It made her heart beat faster with joy. A special place in Emily's soul and life, of course, was Ryan, her fiancé. He worked as a manager in a trading firm selling water heating equipment for private households and business centers, and of course was not poor. The money he received from his job was enough to rent a decent apartment and to travel once a year on vacation to the sea. Emily was proud of her Ryan. Few people she knew had such a modest, kind, intelligent, and charming fiancé. The couple planned to get married next month. The young people had already applied to the registry office and now were preparing for the upcoming celebration. Like any girl in love, Emily experienced an incredible mental uplift, and therefore most of the time was in an exceptionally good mood. This, however, did not cancel the fact that at home she also constantly felt a slight anxiety and nervousness. After all, a huge part of the troubles associated with the organization of the wedding lay on her fragile shoulders. Almost everything, from the choice of dress and the general image of the bride to the seating of several dozen guests at the festive table, was to be organized by her and her mother. Ryan often tried to help. In fact, most of the money for all the expenses was given by him, but he admitted that he had no idea how it all should look like. The groom suggested Emily to order the organization of the celebration from a proven firm, one of the best in the city. "This is our wedding, Ryan, and I want to choose myself what napkins to put on the table and what balloons to decorate the restaurant. Besides, the current organizers of celebrations deliberately overpriced twice. They take advantage of the fact that future newlyweds have little time. That's it, and screwed up on everything in a row. Why, you may ask? If we ourselves can save very well on the same artificial flowers and music." The bride flatly refused. "As you wish." Ryan threw up his hands peacefully, not wanting to argue with his beloved. "Just promise me you'll tell me if you suddenly need any help from me." "Oh, well," Emily promised him, and deciding to play a little joke on the guy, said with a sly squint, "I'll send you a check when the money runs out." Ryan laughed and immediately started tickling his fiancée. "Oh, so I'm just in it for the money," he growled playfully. "Look how self-serving my bride," Emily squealed happily, trying to throw her fiancé's hands off her ribs. Emily loved that Ryan had such a light and simple sense of humor. He naturally never suspected her of anything of the sort and trusted the girl completely in everything that concerned their future joint budget. Nevertheless, the bride was pleasantly warmed by the thought that they understood and felt each other so well that they could talk and joke with each other on absolutely any topics. In short, Emily and Ryan were simply the perfect couple. And although organizing the upcoming wedding took an incredible amount of energy and effort, Emily was convinced that it was all worth it, and they would have the most memorable ceremony, which their grandchildren would not be ashamed to tell about. When, in the middle of calculating the number of guests, Sarah called her and invited her to be the godmother, Emily couldn't refuse. She felt very warmly toward her friend and her newborn son. That's why now on the way to the temple she was excitedly crumpling a small silk handkerchief. Ahead of her was the baptism of little Tommy. The sun's rays burned on the golden domes of the church. It made them shine in a special way that day, softly and dimly, invitingly. Emily felt a sense of solemnity, as if someone upstairs already knew that a new soul was coming into the world today. By the appointed time, the parking lot in front of the temple soon enough began to fill with newly arrived cars, most of which were expensive foreign cars. However, there were also those who had arrived by cab, just like Emily and Ryan O'Regan, even those who had come on foot. Some of the guests went into the interior of the church. The other part stayed waiting at the entrance to later greet Jason and his wife after the baby's baptism. "Wow, look, Ryan, there must be 100 people here," at least Emily exclaimed as she climbed out of the cab. "Yeah," the groom responded, glancing at his watch. "Looks like your friend and her husband have plenty of wealthy friends. Well, I have to stop by the office on the way. The boss asked me to pick up some documents from them. I'll see you at home." Okay, Ryan warned his fiancée in advance that he wouldn't be able to attend the ceremony with her. He had a lot of work to do that day. Emily wasn't upset. After all, she understood that he was working for their mutual good. The guy hugged his beloved goodbye and then disappeared inside the car again. "Remember, you're going to do great. You're a great godmother." He poked his head out the window and gave her one last encouragement. "Go already," Emily said with an embarrassed smile, even though she was already shaking. "I'll tell you all about it tonight." Ryan left, and Emily looked around. She and Benjamin, the second godfather on her husband's girlfriend's side, were supposed to meet at the church at the same time. The girl noticed that today there were many beggars and homeless people near the church. People often stay close to such places. After all, here you can always count on at least some change. Someone will give a coin, and some people give banknotes on big holidays, all in joy. Those who are more fortunate in life are always happy to help the disadvantaged and act nobly. Sometimes the homeless can count on a loaf of bread and the opportunity to get somewhere used, but warm clothes. Today, the local homeless apparently heard from one of the church workers that the baptism of a rich man's son was coming. There were 30 people lined up along one of the church walls. Emily shook all the change she had out of her purse and gave it to the poor. Her heart bled every time she thought of how hard it was for those poor people on the street. "How glad I am to have found you," came a voice behind the girl. Benjamin, she greeted the acquaintance, and together they made their way to the temple where the rite of the sacrament of baptism was just beginning. To Emily's great relief, the rite went smoothly. Tommy, of course, screamed when the bishop began to dip him in the font. But as soon as he wrapped the baby in a towel and handed him to Tommy, the boy immediately quieted down. "Wow," she thought to herself, "this is just like Ryan said it would be. So I can really be a good godmother for this baby. Sarah, Jason, congratulations. Your Brandon now has a guardian angel at his back," Emily said happily, handing the baby from hand to hand. "Your baby's dozing off." "It went well. He didn't cry much," Sarah asked excitedly, looking into her son's face. "Tommy did well. He made it all the way to the holy water," Benjamin said with a victorious fist. "And Emily, too. You should have seen the look on her face when Tommy handed it to her. It was like seeing the Virgin Mary. Then he told me it's rare to have such a bright godmother. That's a very good thing for a baby." "There seems to be something special about your Emily." Emily flashed with embarrassment and hurriedly turned the conversation from her person back to Tommy. A short time later, as Emily was coming down the steps of the church, a beggarly old man squeezed through the crowd. "Congratulations," he said to her. At first, Emily thought it was one of those poor beggars asking for alms, but the old man, who looked to be about 70 years old, just stood silently looking at the girl without making any attempt to speak to her or ask her for money. The old man, dressed in simple, worn almost to holes dark gray pants, a shirt of indeterminate color, and a light sports jacket, looked at Emily with inexpressible longing in his gaze for a split second. It even seemed to the nurse that the beggar's face was vaguely familiar to her. However, the girl was quite sure that she did not know this man and had never met him before. "Excuse me, can I help you?" Emily asked, unable to bear the piercing gaze. "Maybe you need money now. I think I have a few dollars left." The new godmother started rummaging through her purse, but out of the corner of her eye, she saw the old man shake his head. "I don't want your money, honey. I didn't come here for that," he said. Emily froze and struggled to look back at the poor man. "Why then?" she asked cautiously. The older man looked around, then moved a little closer to the nurse and said quietly, "Your fiancé, Ryan, you don't know, and neither does he. But anyway, he's very rich. Do you understand?" Emily recoiled. "What is he talking about?" The girl thought that the poor man was probably a little crazy, or worse, a fool. But he didn't think of stopping. "The father of that boy you baptized today, he didn't become rich for nothing. I unwittingly helped his family without realizing it. It was a long time ago, but that's not even the point, sweetheart. I'm your fiance's father." The astonished Emily didn't know what to think. She wanted to ask the old man more, but the crowd of people meeting Sarah and Jason pushed the beggar aside, and he quickly disappeared from view. The girl walked home as if in a fog. She couldn't get the strange beggar out of her head. "No, this can't be true," Emily thought to herself. On the other hand, he didn't look like a madman or a crook. Why would he say something like that to her when she knew perfectly well that Ryan? But on the other hand, he did say his name. How could the poor guy know such personal information? Emily remembered exactly how she'd met her fiancé. She and Ryan had met a year ago at a birthday party for one of Emily's college friends. They bumped into each other by chance as they were both heading toward the picturesque little lake near the friend's country home where the party was being held. When Emily saw Ryan, tall and slender, and looked into his sky-blue eyes, her heart melted, and she felt a strong sympathy for him. Ryan, too, was captivated by Emily as soon as he heard her gentle voice and saw her long, perfectly blonde hair, as if they had conspired. They realized that they had a lot in common. They both liked the same books, and in terms of movies, their tastes were similar. Emily, despite her work as a nurse, just loved to read Renaissance poetry, and Ryan called Hemingway and Fitzgerald his favorite writers. That moonlit night on the lake was the beginning of their tender and incredibly romantic relationship. Ryan was always trying to surprise her, and sometimes he made inhuman efforts to do so. So one day he decided to organize his beloved a real evening of Spanish passion. Somewhere he'd gotten a guitar, a folk costume with a pear and a wide-brimmed hat, and rented a construction cradle from the local housing service for the evening. Emily was just about to go to bed when she heard outside her window first a strange mechanical creak, and then the lingering notes of some suspiciously Spanish-like serenade. Carefully approaching the window, the girl slowly pulled back the curtain and almost laughed. Standing in front of her in a construction cradle was Ryan, dressed in the national costume of a Spanish street singer. He was desperately trying to imitate the Latin American pronunciation of the words of the song. "Oh my God, keep it down," Emily whispered. Looking back, her parents would hear. "What are you doing here at this hour? Have you lost your mind?" "Yes, I have gone mad with passion for you, my dear Beatrice," stretching the vowels and gently touching the strings of the guitar, sang her lover. The girl laughed softly and helped the boy to climb over the windowsill to her room. "Your jokes are going to backfire on you someday." Emily wagged her finger at him and then gave the serenade singer a touching kiss. "The fourth floor didn't scare me. I was led to you by the power of exceptional love." Ryan squinted slyly at her and then explained in his usual voice, "Actually, I only rented this thing for 2 hours. I thought if you and your mother went to visit your relatives, I'd drive her away quietly. No one will see my shame." They hugged and spent a few more minutes in each other's arms before Emily helped Ryan out and carefully made her way downstairs. There were several more instances like this in their relationship, and each time was a complete surprise to Emily. She adored Ryan as much as he adored her. The only thing that kept her wondering at first was why the guy wouldn't introduce her to his parents. "Yes, they are busy, always all in their commerce," joked the guy, hinting that his mother and father were actively engaged in the sale of some medical equipment. "Maybe we could all have dinner together next time they flew back from their business trip from Kansas." Emily agreed, of course. But still, in the back of her mind, she had a strange feeling that there was something wrong with the story of her Ryan's parents. Finally, after the guy refused to introduce her to his family, Emily couldn't stand it and asked her lover directly. "Stop bullshitting me," Ryan explained to me, "where your mother and father are. You've been promising me to meet them for 6 months, and every time you do, you make up some ridiculous excuse instead. What's going on? We promised we'd never lie to each other." Ryan lowered his head, then said in a muffled voice, "I'm sorry, Emily, I just didn't want you to think I was something I wasn't, that I wasn't worthy of you." "What are you talking about?" The girl didn't understand. "Why can't you be worthy of me? What kind of nonsense is that?" The guy sighed heavily before answering and looked somewhere in the distance past his girlfriend. "You see, you have such great parents. Mom is a therapist, Dad is a real fighter, fights for his health. It is necessary. What kind of fortitude to have?" "So what? Your parents are doing good things too. You said so yourself." "I don't have parents," Ryan cut her off abruptly. "I never had any. I lied to you. I thought you wouldn't go out with me if you knew I was an orphanage graduate." Emily froze for a second, unable to move from the realization of the truth. "So you're an orphan?" she asked slowly. "Yes," Ryan nodded. "As long as I can remember, I've always lived in an orphanage. I'm sorry, I was really afraid you'd fall out of love with me if you knew the truth." Emily silently hugged her lover and rested his head against her chest. "How weird are you, Riley? How could I stop loving you over something like that? What kind of situations do people have in life?" Emily felt Ryan squeeze her tighter in his arms. "You know what, Mom? I never told you this, but I thank God every day that I met you. If it wasn't for you showing up in my life, it would have remained so empty forever." Probably lacking any higher meaning, Emily pulled away from the boy and looked into his clear eyes. "And now it turns out there is meaning." Ryan smiled genuinely, a little childishly. "It turns out there's you, and at home, you're my ultimate meaning now." Immersed in her memories, Emily walked a few more meters when suddenly she felt the ground literally float away from under her feet. It was the sudden dizziness that had caught her in the middle of the busy street. She gasped quietly, at the same time trying to grab the corner of the house she was passing near. However, she stumbled, and not feeling her own body, slowly settled on the asphalt. "Girl, are you sick?" someone called out to Emily. For a fraction of a moment, she still tried to resist the dizziness, but the sticky maelstrom of deep fainting swiftly drew the young nurse into its unconscious net. Immediately around her, there were several more excited female screams, but she could hear them no longer. With great speed, the young woman was plunged into endless blackness, and her last thought was only one thing. "That's it. I'm sorry, Riley." When Emily regained consciousness some time later and slowly opened her eyes, she thought for the first moment that she had gone blind. So bright was the room in which she had been placed that the daylight bulbs built into the panel shone brightly from the ceiling, making the surroundings seem unnaturally white, giving her a negative effect after the clammy and cold darkness. To the right of the girl stood several massive devices, one of which constantly emitted a subtle and unpleasant beeping sound. Barely turning her head, Emily realized that this was the way her heart rate was being measured. "Here comes our mysterious patient awake," said an elderly doctor, entering the room after a while. In his hands, Emily noticed a small red folder, which contained some sheets with appointments, prescriptions of drugs, as well as the results of the girl's tests, which the doctor studied with undisguised interest. "Doctor, what's wrong with me?" "How did I get here?" Emily asked, slowly enunciating each word. The girl felt incredibly tired, as if she had been carrying more than a dozen sacks of flour on her back. "And you don't remember anything?" inquired the one, but did not press the patient, and almost immediately added, "You passed out in the middle of the street. Thank God we found some kind-hearted citizens and called an ambulance for you. You can rest easy now. Your life is not in danger." "Fainted," repeated slowly after him the nurse. "I don't remember anything at all." "Doctor, am I sick with something very frightening?" Emily's voice trembled, barely containing her excitement. But the doctor immediately hurried to calm the girl. "Relax. Calm down, please. You should not be nervous at all now." Then, smiling at Emily with a somewhat enigmatic smile, the elderly doctor finished the sentence. "You are not sick at all. It's the pregnancy." "What?" Emily could only exhale. "Yes, you heard right. Congratulations, you are pregnant," the doctor said again, but in a firmer voice. "The due date is still very young. Only 6 weeks. However, the tests will not lie. It is absolutely certain that you will have a child." At that moment, it was as if a switch had flicked in Emily's head, and she remembered with crystal clarity everything that had preceded her fainting spell. "Emily, well, thank goodness," Ryan exclaimed, entering the room. In his hands, he was holding a huge bouquet of white faggots. "It's like you're my own kin, scared me into gray hairs. I'll come back to you later," promised the doctor, and smiling quietly to himself, went out into the corridor. Emily tried to sit up, but was not immediately able to do so. The room before her eyes swayed threateningly again. "There's no need to sit up, Riley, I'm fine. But I almost fainted," she said. "Not a light one," the young manager said indignantly. "When I got the call from the hospital, I thought I was going to go crazy right there. What happened?" Emily thought for a second, then decided she shouldn't tell her fiancé about the beggar just yet. "You know, Ryan, for some reason you can really start getting ready now," she asked with a restrained laugh. "For what?" He didn't get it. "Are you in good health? Are you in pain?" "No, honey, I'm not in pain," she assured her lover. "It's just that someone is going to be a daddy very soon." Ryan's face held a stunned expression for a moment, and then he finally realized what his fiancée was talking about. "Really? You're not kidding?" "I'm going to be a father." Instead of answering, the girl nodded happily and pulled the hospital blanket up to her chin. The doctor said, "It's a sure thing," she added and smiled. "How happy is that?" "I can't believe it," Ryan kept telling himself. "I'm going to be a father. I'm going to be a daddy. Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you. Thank you." Ryan began to cover the girl's face with kisses, and even did a couple of dance laps around the room. It was the first time Emily had ever seen her fiancé so happy. "Emily," Riley asked timidly, suddenly remembering something, "can I ask you one thing?" "Of course, anything," the boy assured her. "You shifted a little, but you still dared to say it. Once you told me about the orphanage. You said you'd lived there for as long as you could remember. And you don't remember what happened before that. No memories of the people who might have put you there?" The smile slowly faded on Ryan's face. The young man frowned and sat down on the edge of his fiancé's bed. "No, I told you, I don't remember anything at all. Maybe there was something. But I was so small at the time, I don't think I could have remembered anything." "Why do you ask?" "No reason," the bride said evasively and averted her eyes. "I was just thinking about something." "Never mind. It's nothing." The girl bit her lip. She wondered if the strange old man's confession could be true, even partially. In the end, Emily decided to find the beggar and find out everything from him, so that there would be no mistake. A couple of days later, Emily was discharged from the hospital, and, without wasting time, she, instead of work, went in search of the mysterious poor man. The first thing she did, of course, was to go to the very church where her friend's son was baptized, and where she saw the man she needed so much. As usual, There were many beggars around, but she did not find the old man among them. Having gathered courage, Emily approached a group of elderly homeless people and asked them if they had seen her acquaintance. The beggars looked at the young girl with suspicion at first. Why should she, such a beautiful woman, look for some poor man? But then one of them did talk, receiving from Emily as an incentive of $5. "Actually, this Nikita will not be one of ours," began the homeless man. He didn't seem to be begging at all, just poorly dressed, and he didn't seem to be doing very well with money either. So his name was Nikita, the girl noted to herself. "All right. Anything else you can think of?" Another homeless man in his 60s on crutches said slowly, obviously recalling some details. He seemed to be a visitor from the region. He said, "I want to confess in the temple. I sinned a lot in my youth. I've plowed all the blackness out of my soul," he said. And I also noticed that he was expressing himself in an uncomplicated way. And then he saw someone in the crowd and shook all over, as if he had been struck in the head by lightning, by God. And that was it. He was gone. We never saw him again. Emily looked around. "Where do you think he might have gone? He must have spent the night somewhere." The homeless people said, "We don't know." Emily was upset. So she'd have to leave with nothing, with just a name that doesn't really mean anything. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack. But then she was approached by a woman whose age was hard to determine by eye. She could have been in her 30s, or even in her 50s. The woman smiled quite friendly. The girl realized that the woman needed a reward, so without further ado she offered her a dolce, $1. "The man you're looking for is staying at a cheap hostel in the corner of Lincoln Avenue," she shouted in a hoarse voice. I saw him drive in there myself. He had a gym bag on his shoulder, but it was small. "So he won't be here long. You'd better hurry if you want to catch him." "Thank you," Emily thanked the woman profusely, and she took a quick step in that direction. The homeless woman wasn't lying. As Emily approached the hostel, she saw the old man who had introduced himself as Ryan's father. The man was sitting on a bench in front of an unremarkable, dilapidated building, smoking a cigarette thoughtfully. "Where are you?" "Did I find you after all?" Emily exhaled excitedly and literally fell on the bench next to the old man. "Yes, I wasn't in any particular hurry," he said, letting out a cloud of smoke. "I'll be gone today, sweetheart. Don't worry. I won't bother you and Ryan anymore." "I understand that you're his fiancée, right?" Emily corrected the old man. "We were supposed to get married next month. But how do you know my fiancés? Why did you say you were his father? Please tell me. I really need to know." Ryan said he was an orphan and that he never knew his parents. "Mind you, I'm not leaving here until I know the truth." Emily lifted her chin bravely and prepared to hear any answer but a negative one. To her surprise, the elderly poor man spoke up. "Let's go to my room. Emily, will you give me a hand?" The old man squinted his eyes. "What do you think I came to this town for?" A short time later, Emily and Ben Adamson, that was the beggar's name, were sitting in the cramped kitchen of the hotel room, drinking strong tea that the old man had made from tea bags. Emily listened intently to his story. It turns out Ben Adamson wasn't always like this. There was a time 30 years ago when he ran a successful business related to the fishing industry. His fish and caviar were present on the shelves of self-respecting, discerning supermarket customers. The businessman's products were very popular and even had an extensive advertising campaign on television. Ben Adamson had everything that could dream of a healthy, strong, purposeful man at his age. A huge luxury mansion on 3 floors with a swimming pool and billiard room. Reliable, stable business, prosperous, expensive car of elite brands, and beloved wife, a beauty who constantly made Adamson feel in her presence young. "Everything was good with us," Ben Adamson said, quickly hanging sugar in mugs of tea. The house a full cup. Vacation twice a year. At a time when others couldn't afford to go to the sea once every 5 years. They had clothes and jewelry that the president's wife couldn't even own, and I did everything for Amber, I promise you. The man was silent for a moment, immersed in his memories, and then continued. "And the only thing I always asked her to do was to give me a son, an heir. But at first she had no time, and then, in general, we found out that my Amber had almost no chance to get pregnant. Congenital abnormality, so the doctors said. And I was very worried then. I was ready to spend any money for my wife's treatment. If only everything would work out. If only a miracle would happen." "And your wife," Emily asked cautiously, "she must be terribly upset too." Then the former businessman grinned with the edge of his lips and shook his head negatively. "Alas, no. Amber didn't really care if she ever had children or not. Of course, she'd gone for tests, been to an expensive clinic, even gone to a special sanatorium in the Alps, but I could see that she was doing all of this through sheer force. Through she couldn't. just so that I continued to pay for her endless trips to the beautician, jewelry and fashion boutiques and the like. Ben Adamson said that Amber, having learned the taste of big money, became addicted to spending it on her entertainment. Very quickly. There wasn't a day that Ben didn't receive notice of the fabulous spending his wife was doing. And of course, she didn't care how hard her husband had to work to make more and more money. Sometimes I was physically exhausted just to make a deal. And what do you think at home? The next night, I get a bill from the bank. My Amber, it turns out, had bought herself a fox coat, 6th or 7th in a row. I'd already lost count. The old man confided in Emily Tommy could not believe that what the beggar was telling her could be the truth. The girl was tormented by the question, how could he have fallen into such deplorable circumstances in life? Sometimes I don't understand how she could turn so quickly from a simple, somewhat naive, but kind and loving girl into what she became at the end of our marriage, Adamson lamented. I brought her from the backwoods. I thought if her heart was pure, she wouldn't have that thirst. How wrong was I? The former businessman said that it took several more years before he finally realized that he would never have children with his wife. Meanwhile, time was passing. He had already turned 45. And the businessman was well aware that in 10 to 15 years he would still need a successor, someone to whom he could hand over the management of the company. And then I thought, what do I have to lose? Who cares how I have a son? As long as I finally have one single person by my side who I hoped would love me as a father, as a dad, and not as a walking bag of money desperate. Ben wanted to take the boy from the orphanage and even began to collect all the necessary documents. When, as if out of the blue, he got the news that his wife was pregnant. You can't imagine what I experienced then. The former businessman shared his heartbreak with his girlfriend. This is an incredible feeling for a man, the opportunity to become a father, and even a native son. Can you imagine? True, Amber my whole term suffered from toxicosis and other female troubles, but at the end of the day, at least I was happy. His wife, when it came to childbirth, scolded terribly. She was ready to burn him with a look. Only I told her clearly then, be patient. It's a woman's duty to me. Give birth to my son. And she did. Adamson plunged into memories that Emily realized were the happiest of his life. She was a different person then. I thought I finally had the girl I'd once fallen madly in love with back. For 3 years, she took care of the baby. She did everything around the house by herself. Basically, she became a normal woman. I couldn't get overjoyed. I thought, well, that's it. It's true what they say, that a child directs his mother only for the better. But even here I miscalculated. The old man sighed deeply, and tears glistened in his eyes. As it turned out, Ben spent all his free time working and expanding the company. Wanted to make sure Ryan and Amber had only the best of everything, and make sure they didn't need anything for the rest of their lives. However, the longer he was away from home, the cooler their spouse and relationship became. Amber didn't care about the deals and her family's well-being. Gradually, the dragon that had fallen asleep for a while inside the woman who had just given birth raised its muzzle again. I mean, she's got me wrapped around her finger, hasn't she? Can you imagine? Adamson lamented. Ryan was only 3 years old when she started dumping him on the nanny when I wasn't there, and she was tumbling around in our bedroom with her young lover, my driver. By the way, I, as the last fool, was among the last to know. All the servants kept silent, afraid of the anger of this scoundrel, and it was to her advantage when the fact of treason was revealed. This was followed by a huge scandal, during which, as the businessman said, his wife told him that he broke her whole life and drank all the juices out of her, and then she ran away. Just like that, she left him with a small son in her arms. He only later realized that she had been preparing for divorce in this way for a long time, and now decided to go straight to the front. She faxed him all the documents. Can you imagine that? Of course. After all, she was now entitled to half his company and his money, and she got it all. Every last dime. While he was slowly but surely going down the drain, she spent and spent and spent. The older man looked tired. The girl realized that he was reliving those dramatic moments of his youth that he had decided to tell her about. After that, it was as if something had broken in him. He does not know, probably this expression will seem trite, but it was. He felt with his skin how all his hopes and dreams broke with a loud crunch, like bones in the hot sun. He started drinking a little at first, and only with trusted friends. But then, he didn't notice it himself. At some point, all these marginalized individuals started showing up at his house. The thing is, at that point, he didn't think they were marginalized at all. Quite the opposite. He had no one he could go to for advice. You wouldn't go to the cook or the gardener with that, would you? Would you? So maybe he began to seek solace at the bottom of a bottle. In the space of 6 months, Adamson had gone from successful businessman to neglected alcoholic. The man felt how his dark side is increasingly taking over and realized that he himself can no longer cope with this problem. However, instead of turning to the appropriate specialists, Ben handed over the management of all the affairs of his firm to a good companion, hoping that he would be able to keep his company afloat. While Adamson himself would indulge in various vices, I turned the company over to this Johnson, the companion. We trusted him with the firm, and we left our son in charge. A Riley of his own, God forgive him, almost sobbed the ex-businessman. But what else was I to do? I had no relatives. And the boy needed someone who wouldn't drink 24 hours a day, 7 days a week without a break. Johnson seemed like a great option to me at the time. I needed to drown out all my pain, Emily. And my son, he was just a baby then, and I was starting to fear for him. As long as something bad didn't happen while I was on another bender, Emily was silent. She didn't know what to say to such a frank confession. After all, she wasn't in Ben's shoes, but she absolutely knew she wouldn't trade her own child for a bottle, even if Ryan suddenly dumped her. While I was drinking, some prominent coworker planted fake documents on me. I signed them in a huff. I don't even remember how, but I ended up in jail. I did almost 8 years on and off. But in that time, Johnson took over my firm, and the bastard gave my son to Riley at the orphanage, realizing that Ben was literally tearing his hair out. Emily tried to calm him down. It turned out that after his release, the former businessman had been wandering the streets for some time, thinking he would never be able to find his son again. I thought Ryan had disowned me. He changed his name, of course, but by then he had nothing left. But when the right people told me who stole my firm and my son from me, I couldn't just swallow it all. Sparks of hatred lit up in Adamson's eyes. How could he do that to me? I thought he was one of my first friends, and he let me go to the world. And he locked my son up in an orphanage. So I pulled myself together and went to my family. I still have some acquaintances from my past life, not the most important ones. So they gave me Ryan's picture and the address where he lives now. Except I never got around to going up to him. I followed you to the church, and then you came up to me and told me everything. But I couldn't understand at first, so I looked for you myself. And I found you. Emily frowned. Then a moment later asked Ben Adamson, "Wait a minute, you said your companion's last name was Johnson?" "Well, yes," Adamson confirmed her guess. "The boy you became godmother to the other day is Gerard's grandson. That is, Jason Johnson, his son." "Gerard's son," Emily marveled. The man nodded. "Jason, I think, had something to do with it here. He was just a kid at the time, the same age as my Riley, maybe a little younger. I'd really like to look Gerard in the eye, to ask him for all the years I lost in the colony." Emily thought for a moment, then said, "I think that can be arranged. I'll talk to Sarah and Jason, but I have to warn you, Gerard is very sick right now. The Johnsons themselves don't know if he'll live to see Tommy's next birthday." Then all the more reason to make it. Adamson became agitated upon hearing such information. "And understand, it's important to you and Ryan, isn't it? Maybe this is the only way I can atone for my sins." "I agree," Emily nodded, and they decided to get down to business immediately. Emily wanted to be absolutely sure she wasn't making a mistake. She took Ryan's comb hair, and the hair provided to her by Ben Adamson, and submitted it all to the DNA lab for testing. Exactly a week later, the answer came back confirming the blood relationship between her fiancé and the penniless former businessman Adamson. "So, do you believe it now?" the old man asked her. "I certainly believe it now," the girl answered him. Adamson asked not to organize a meeting with Ryan yet, saying he wanted to settle things with Johnson first. Emily agreed, and soon Ben Adamson was standing in the doorway of his companion's bedroom. An anxious Jason and Sarah said they'd be in the next room, just in case. Adamson was dressed very poorly, and they were still a little wary of him. The nurse assured them nothing to worry about, but she herself stayed in the room with the couple, not wanting to disturb the conversation between longtime friends. "Well, hello, Gerard. I see that fate has rolled over you too. None of us were spared," greeted the sick businessman, Ben Adamson. Gerard Johnson was warned who exactly will come to him, and he, to the genuine surprise of his relatives, had himself requested that the watchman be admitted at the earliest opportunity. "Hello, Ben," simply answered his old friend, and tried to get up in bed. Immediately, however, a fit of violent coughing began. The man looked haggard, so undermined was he by years of incurable disease. "Yes, as you can see, I'm about to become a living mummy. I don't have long to live." A faint and sad smile flashed across Johnson's face. "We should get our affairs in order, you and I." Adamson stepped closer to the bed. You orphaned my son for life. You stole from me. Do you want to answer to me for what you've done, Gerard? Johnson's dry skin looked like ancient parchment up close. The dying businessman nodded in agreement. I will answer. Forgive me, Ben, I repent. My soul has sinned. I did a terrible thing to you and your son back then. I think maybe life has punished me with this very disease. I still think, how could I dare to do such a thing? Okay, the firm, you were so drunk that we on the board of directors didn't know if you were going to get out of it or not. But Riley, I'll never forgive myself for that, not even in the afterlife. I'm sorry you pushed me into this, so that my soul won't suffer in eternal fire. Adamson thought for a moment. Before him lay a dying man whose hours were almost numbered. Would he take on another sin? The sin of unforgiveness. God be with you, Gerard. I forgive you. What are we going to do now? Fight with you till the grave. We're not both young men anymore. I won't take any more sin on my soul. Thank you, Johnson exhaled with relief. Barely audible, Adam said, and then convulsed again. Here's this for you, the businessman said a moment later and pulled a folder from under the mattress, which he passed from hand to Adamson. The man quickly flipped through the papers and raised an astonished look to his companion. What is this? A wedding present for your son, Ryan, the man said with difficulty and reached for a glass of water that stood nearby on the nightstand. It's the paperwork to transfer half of my fortune and assets to your Ryan. Jason is aware of it. He's putting signatures where necessary. May everything I took from you be returned to you, at least for now, while I still have some time left. Shaken to the core, Ben Adamson shook Adam's hand and felt, to his great regret, the incoming death chill of inevitability from his companion. Thank you was all Adamson could manage to mumble, followed by a stingy male tear rolling down his cheek. Ryan and I will never forget you and what you did. It was honorable of you. Adam covered his hand with his palm. Rest assured, you and your family will have the best of everything. And thank Emily. Tell her thanks for christening my grandson. She's a good girl. She's only going to be happy with Ryan. As he left Adam's room, Ben Adamson kept trying to wipe away the tears dripping from his eyes. But their flow would not stop, revealing the bitterness and pain of the years he had lost and lived so miserably. The next day, Emily organized a meeting between father and son. Ryan was very worried. He couldn't believe that he still had people close to him, especially that he had his own father. Of course, he was shocked by Adamson's story, but he still forgave his father. He had been around orphaned for too long to throw away the opportunity to have a family again. Son, I'm sorry I was such a fool. If it weren't for the green serpent, you and I would be living very different lives right now. I've wasted so many years, lost you along with them. I don't know if you could take me like that. But if you do, it will be the greatest happiness to me. An old lost man stopped reminiscing about the past. His father hugged him tightly, a bear-like grip. Ryan, it's enough that you and I have spent so many years hobbling around like lost souls. Now that we have the opportunity for a fresh start, are we really going to let this opportunity slip away? After all, in life you should always only move forward, because you can't change the past, and all real life is here and now. Adamson cried, wiping his tears with the sleeve of his son's shirt. Emily quietly walked over to them both and gently stroked the back of first her son and then his father. Let's go have a better dinner, the pregnant girl suggested to them. By the way, Ben Adamson, as an expert on seafood delicacies, can you tell us which fish is best for the wedding table? Adamson's eyes immediately lit up with the familiar businesslike glint he once adored. I'll not only give you a hint, I'll choose and order the kind of fish that not every millionaire has on his table on holidays. I know, and Ben Adamson went into lengthy explanations of the differences between whitefish and freshly caught Norwegian salmon. So, Nurse Emily Smith, without expecting it, became the wife of a millionaire, who turned out to be Ryan Adamson. He now bears his father's surname, a former simple manager from the firm selling water. Adam didn't fool his father. Jason really transferred exactly half of his fortune to Emily's fiancé, and so they became as rich as few of them could have imagined. Emily and Ryan's wedding was a bright, beautiful event in town. All of the couple's friends and their closest relatives were there. Emily's father had that very paid surgery. Now he can walk again. So far, however, only with a stick, but he is already planning their common family vacation on the ocean. The man is happy and is no longer going to change his family even for the most well-paid flight. Emily herself smoothly transitioned from the honeymoon to maternity leave. After the due date, the girl gave birth to a wonderful baby boy, who was named Constantin. Now she lives with her husband, son, and their common parents in a large and incredibly beautiful house made of stone and wood in country style, which the Adamsons bought almost as soon as they received their share of Adam's capital. Here's your daughter, said Ben Adamson to her, handing her the keys in the sunlight. Live now as the fish magnates once did. Only love your husband And don't forget that humanity and respect for each other are worth 100 times more than any money, punished her, smiling father-in-law. I swear that your son and I will always respect and accept each other, support each other, as if we have infinity ahead of us. The young mother promised him, adjusting the soft windproof envelope in which her baby slept sweetly and warmly. As for Ryan, he had left the firm he worked for and was fully immersed in his own project. For its development, he always lacked time and material resources. Now the young man is conducting his own research in the field of innovative software. If he calculates everything correctly, it will be able to radically change the existing market of computer programs and will bring a lot of benefits to the domestic industry. Every year on one of the fresh spring days, the Adamson family now goes to the cemetery. There, they care for the grave on an equal footing with the Smith family. Emily, Ryan, and Ben Adamson have not forgotten Jason's father's act, and oddly enough, continue to be grateful to him. Emily secretly hopes that a strong friendship will eventually develop between her son and the Smith family's son. This friendship from childhood affection is sure to grow into a strong brotherly feeling and stay with their boys for life. After inheriting her parents' house, her older sister kicks Jennifer and her baby out onto the street. And when she finds out ... day 4. Could she really do that? Veronica asked in despair. It's not fair. Her mother Jennifer led her gaze along the walls of the small but very cozy room, where every little thing, every detail was dear and filled with memories, though not always pleasant, at the mere thought that a quiet and measured life had suddenly come to an end. A chill ran down her spine. Irma has every right to do that, Jennifer said at last. What about us? There's nothing we can do but leave. The tiny flicker of hope in Veronica's eyes faded. She lowered her fluffy dark eyelashes, shrank into a ball, and was silent. Not by years smart and serious Veronica was about to graduate from the 10th grade and then go to conquer the big city so as not to repeat the fate of her mother. The hotness with which Veronica was interested in their future fate was unnecessary. She knew that her mother was telling the truth and that they had no other choice. But despite that, she still didn't want to believe what was happening. It seemed like some kind of bad dream, and she was about to wake up. When she finally looked at her mother, Veronica noted with sadness that she had somehow become sad and seemed to have lost interest in what was going on since she had learned the unpleasant news. Why did grandfather do it? Exclaimed her daughter in anger. Didn't he think of us? What difference does it make now? Jennifer sighed and smiled with just her lips. It's time to pack. Please don't take too much. We won't be any better off with a heavy load. Slowly rising to her feet, Jennifer reached across the table and began to pick up the papers, folding them neatly into a tattered cardboard folder. Finally, she found the unfortunate sheet that had divided their lives into before and after. After running her eyes over the smooth lines, satisfied that there could be no mistake, Jennifer folded it in half and put it away. Jennifer was born in a small village, lingering among the countless small villages scattered across the map of the region like wild apples on the ground at the end of summer. Jennifer loved her native land and knew all the locals by sight, and her childhood could have been happy and carefree if it hadn't been for her mother. Madeline was never happy. She kept her daughters Jennifer and Irma under strict control, never letting them off the hook for a minute, as well as her husband Bernard, who was more silent and tried to spend any free minute outside the house, doing the housework. Unlike her older sister Irma, Jennifer always did what her mother told her to do, trying to please her and earn her approval. But despite her best efforts, she never managed to earn her mother's love. Irma was 5 years older than her sister, and her mother's character. So often quarrels broke out in the house, which even Bernard could not extinguish. It became increasingly difficult to get along together, and therefore, driven by the desire to get out from under the wing of an oppressive mother, Irma soon after graduation married and left the village. Jennifer, on the other hand, stayed. She married a seemingly decent and quiet young man named Ashley, and after a while she gave birth to his daughter Veronica. All would be nothing But family life under one roof with Madeline did not add up, and to find their corner young could not because of the banal lack of money. In the end, notwithstanding the quarrels with his mother-in-law, Ashley suggested Jennifer to go to the other side of the country to his distant relative. The idea was tempting, but too risky. So Jennifer, unaccustomed to such sudden changes, hesitated. "What are we going to do if your uncle drives us away?" she asked again and again when her husband talked about moving and the work. "What if we can't find a job? Besides, my mom will be against it." "Why ask her at all?" My husband got angry. "Let's go. Your sister did the right thing. She packed her bags and left. She's married and happy now." "I can't just leave like that," Jennifer objected. "And Veronica? What about her without her grandmother?" "Either you come with me, or I'm going alone. You don't love me anyway, and I don't love you." "We rushed the wedding," Ashley said dryly. "You know that. I'm not ready to stay here for my daughter and put up with your mother. And there are no good jobs in this town, and there never will be. You decide for yourself. Just remember my word, you'll have no peace with your mother as long as she's around." The confession that her husband did not love her took Jennifer by surprise. Of course, she herself realized that there had never been any real, genuine feelings in their relationship, but she didn't dare say it out loud. And why would she? Is there such a thing as true love? Looking at her parents' marriage, Jennifer sadly realized that her father was unhappy but couldn't leave because of the children. Ashley was like her father in some ways, just as calm, sensible, and non-confrontational. The only difference was that he wasn't afraid to start over. Leaving his wife and daughter in confusion, Ashley packed his things and went to spend the night at a neighbor's house, giving Jennifer a couple of days to think about it. It is not known whether he really wanted them to go with him, or whether he offered it out of pity, generosity, or other motives. But upon learning of the refusal, he quietly packed up and left the settlement for good. At first, Jennifer missed her husband. Without him, the house became simply unbearable. But there was no place to leave her parents with a small child in her arms, and Ashley hadn't left her an exact address where he was going. From the day her son-in-law left, Madeline had taken Jennifer in her stride. She wouldn't let her get away with her advice and reproaches, calling her daughter inept and unfit for the role of a real mother. Jennifer had nothing to do but grit her teeth and be patient and silent. So as soon as Veronica went to kindergarten, Jennifer took a job at a local farm to be home less often. When Veronica turned 9, Madeline was gone. And as awful as it sounds, Jennifer breathed a sigh of relief for a while. Her father wasn't too sad about his wife either, and after a couple of months he took a fancy to one of the neighbors and moved in with her, leaving Jennifer and Veronica in the care of the owners. From that moment on, their free life began. The daughter went to school, and Jennifer, having changed several jobs in the village, got a job in the school canteen, which was quite satisfactory. Trouble came when they weren't expecting it. A few years later, Bernard suddenly fell ill. He was rushed from one doctor to another, who could not find out the cause of his illness. He wasted precious time. When the diagnosis was finally made, there was no help for him, and the woman with whom Bernard had been living for the past few years had grown cold to him, apparently unwilling to take on the burden. Jennifer took her father's departure hard. Unlike her mother, he loved her, and sometimes was the only person who was interested in what was happening in her daughter's life. It seemed that things couldn't get any worse. But how mistaken she was. A few weeks later, after a little more peace of mind, Jennifer decided to look at some old color photographs of people who had been gone for a long time, frozen in time. As she pulled out a photo album covered in a soft red cloth from the dresser, she noticed a small envelope lying in the far corner of the drawer, unremarkable. It piqued her genuine interest. Looking inside, Jennifer found some paper, unfolding it and dropping the heavy photo album from her hands. At the noise, her daughter came running in. "Mom, are you hurt? What's wrong?" Approaching her mother, Veronica was scared out of her wits. Jennifer silently moved her lips and, eyes wide open, looked somewhere in the distance. How could he? Who, Mum? Veronica asked. Sit down. I'll get some water. Nothing, Jennifer whispered. What's going to happen to us now? Veronica, my Veronica. Throwing the envelope and the ill-fated sheet on the dresser, Jennifer covered her face with her hands and sobbed. Nothing seemed to be able to calm her down and bring her to her senses. Veronica didn't understand what was happening, so without waiting for permission, she grabbed the paper and started reading. It can't be, she whispered. So our house belongs to Irma? He signed it over to her. Jennifer exclaimed and collapsed helplessly on the couch, hiding her face in the cushion. But you said Auntie has her own house, said Veronica. Mum, don't cry, please. She's not going to throw us out on the street. We're kin. And why would she want that wreck? Jennifer was silent. She didn't want to upset her daughter. She couldn't quite believe it was true. How could he? The man to whom she had given all her warmth and affection as a child, whom she had nursed and been with to her last breath. They had never spoken of the inheritance. Jennifer was afraid of offending her father, and she did not want to start this conversation, believing to the last that everything would be all right. However, reading the stamped paper, she clearly remembered the numbers when it was signed. That made it especially painful. Shall we talk to your aunt? Veronica suggested. Do you want me to come with you? Grandpa said Irma's a good person. She just has a hard life. Wiping away the tears that rolled from her eyes against her will, Jennifer struggled to calm herself. No, don't, darling. I'll go and see her myself. Especially since it's been so long since we've seen each other. We'll have something to talk about. Jennifer had planned her trip thoroughly. The road to the village, where her sister had lived all these years, was not close. Besides, it was necessary to think it over. She had rehearsed the most important part of the conversation dozens of times. Even so, it wasn't certain until the end how her sister would react to the news. They hadn't seen Irma in over a decade. Having met the last time quite by chance in the passport office of the regional center, Irma behaved coldly and aloofly. They exchanged a couple of meaningless phrases with her sister and bragged a little about their lives. Quickly, she said goodbye. She did not communicate with her father, took no interest in her mother's affairs, and spoke only of herself. Nor did she come later, when her parents needed her, and when they first one and then the other were gone. It was not difficult to find the house. In the small village where her sister had lived all these years, people were very talkative and curious, and therefore gladly pointed the way to a stone, two-story house with a rather large, by local standards, plot, which stood out among the others. However, Jennifer did not manage to go inside beyond the fence. Her sister, seeing a familiar face, quickly stepped outside the fence and closed the gate behind her. Wrapping herself in a light lilac jacket, which the cool spring wind had mussed, she stepped over a large puddle and found herself on a slippery but smooth surface of ice that had not yet melted. Time seemed to have no power over Irma's appearance. She was still young and well-groomed, with dark, arched eyebrows and a slightly prominent chin. She looked at the world as ruthlessly and irritably as her mum once had. Jennifer didn't remember her mum young, but judging by the old photographs stored in her dresser drawer, they were practically the same face. "Why are you here?" Irma asked at once. "Hello, you look so much better," Jennifer remarked sincerely. "We need to talk to you about something. I know about the fresher part without you. But it's not a good time, because I've got a lot on my plate," said Irma, with a haughty look. Jennifer felt a sudden urge to tell her what was on her mind, but held back and asked, "Why didn't you come to see your father? He waited for you until the last minute. He wanted to see you." "Is that why you're here?" Irma exclaimed. I phoned and spoke to your husband. He said he'd pass on Dad's request. So what if you didn't come? So there wasn't time. That's all. I don't have dinner ready, and the kids are coming home from school. Jennifer laughed and then sighed and told the whole story straightforwardly, without holding back. As she spoke, Irma's face stretched and then took on a very satisfied expression. There she laughed. There is justice in this world. I don't see why he signed the house over to you. Could it be some mistake? We're both his daughters. Irma pushed her eyebrows together. Are you trying to get your hands on the inheritance? Living there all these years while we've been squatting and renting. And now you think it's going to go back to the way it was? No, darling, if my father left the house to me, then that's the way it has to be, her sister hissed. You'd better get your things together quick. It won't be much to sell, but it'll be money well spent. Wait, where are we going to go? I don't have money to rent a place. And where in the middle of nowhere would you find an empty house to live in? Jennifer said at a loss. Veronica has just over a year of school left. And then she'll go to college. If you do decide to sell, then let us stay at least until next summer. And then you can do whatever you want. No, you have your family, I have mine. By the way, I need money as much as you do. The kids are growing by leaps and bounds. I'm sick of buying them clothes, Irma exclaimed. Pack your bags and hurry up. She turned round without another word and went quickly out of the wicket door. The cool spring wind blew in his face, as if trying to dull the pain that kept him from breathing. Feeling devastated, Jennifer walked away, bitterly realizing that she no longer had a sister. Who was this woman who had looked down on her a few minutes ago? And what had she and Veronica done to deserve that attitude? She didn't remember how she got home. Jennifer had gone out into the hay by nightfall and, without even undressing, had gone straight to bed. She didn't want to tell her daughter the details of her meeting with Irma, to upset her and tell her that as of today, they had nothing but a pile of useless things. Jennifer kept it all to herself for a few days, denying it, and then told Veronica about her sister's decision. As she packed her things, Jennifer felt nothing. She didn't seem to care what happened next. And she might have, if it hadn't been for Veronica. Her daughter wasn't herself and kept replaying the situation in her mind, and then started looking for a way out. She was going to stay with a school friend, then she suggested staying at the local school, having made an agreement with the watchman, and then she was going to go to the district center and stay with someone she knew who had left the village not so long ago. Canceling her options, Jennifer began to come to her senses. What was she really? A daughter can still be said, a child thinking about the future, and a grown woman just mourns the betrayal of her sister and father. From these thoughts in the soul grew resentment. Dropping her traveling bag on the bench, Jennifer straightened up abruptly and looked at Veronica, who was pacing back and forth in the room, and asked, "Put the kettle on, will you? And I'll walk to the shop. Why, I'll buy something tasty. When was the last time we ate sweets?" Just for no reason, no occasion, Jennifer smiled, looking out of the window. "I don't remember either. It's such lovely weather today. And it's a day off." Veronica was silent for a long time, watching her mother take out clothes from the wardrobe, and then she asked quietly, with a pleading tone in her voice, "Mum, maybe you shouldn't." "Don't what?" "Don't go, please," the daughter whispered. "Clinton's dad went out to fix the car and never came back. Darren told me that no one could even think at the time. That dad was unusually cheerful and happy in the morning. And then they found him in the garage. All that debt. Don't, Mum. How will I be alone? I don't have a father. He doesn't need me. You haven't seen what he's like. I don't have anyone else but you." Veronica was overwhelmed and rushed forward. She grabbed her mum's hand, so hard that even if she wanted to, It would be impossible to get free. Her daughter's eyes filled with tears. Jennifer had never seen her like this. She had never imagined that her daughter could have such terrible thoughts in her head. Veronica, what the hell are you thinking? Spit, where am I going to go? Did you really think I'd just leave you here alone? Never, never that's going to happen. Do you hear me? You're the only person I love. Jennifer hugged her daughter. I just wanted to take my mind off the endless packing. And I wanted to have a word with Mrs. Monica. She knows everyone here. Maybe she can help us with our situation. It's no big deal what happened. Trust me, we're alive and well. That's what matters. Walls, a roof over our heads, that's what matters. She held her daughter tightly to herself and, breathing in the pleasant scent of vanilla, which smelled of her thick hair, gathered in a braid, whispered, "That's it, let's go and get the kettle. We'll take an appetizing walk together, and you'll choose the cake yourself." Veronica nodded silently, but did not let her mother out of her embrace for a long time. It was only at that moment that Jennifer realized that her seemingly cheerful and sensible daughter was actually very worried and afraid of being left alone in the world. Just as Jennifer had once feared that her mother would kick her out of the house. She had threatened to, and more than once. As she hugged her daughter, Jennifer remembered her sister. How friendly they had been. She thought Irma was a kindred spirit, albeit one of contradictions. Dependent on her moods, but she was her own, she wouldn't betray her. When it became clear that my father could not be helped, thoughts of inheritance crept into my head. What would happen after he was gone? Apart from his 2 daughters, Bernard had no other relatives, which meant that the house, the only property he had, would go to them equally. Running through the options in her mind, Jennifer had already decided to buy her sister's share. Of course, not all at once, but to give the money in installments, if she agreed. In this area, where work was worth its weight in gold, the land was worth a penny, and even half of the old wooden house would be of no use to anyone. There was no way to sell it or rent it out. People abandoned their homes and simply left for other communities where they could get a job. Jennifer understood how a few years ago their retired neighbors, who dreamed of moving to the district center, had decided to get money for their property. However, half of a stone 2-family house and a small plot of land with outbuildings were not wanted. At first, the price in the advertisement was enough to buy a house in the city with additional payment. However, nobody was in a hurry to buy. Lowering the price tag, the neighbors came to the conclusion that, having given away a good house for almost nothing, they would be able to buy in the district center only a used car, and nothing more. The idea of moving remained a dream. Like the owners, the houses remained in the village. The house where Jennifer and Veronica lived was falling apart. The roof needed repair. The buildings where they used to keep cattle had rotted away, and gas had never been piped to the house. So Jennifer was sure that Irma could be negotiated with, and the situation did not seem desperate at the time. When she took the will in her hands, however, she suddenly realized that her father had left her nothing but a residence in the house, which would very soon have another owner. Irma's behavior was now unpredictable, so Jennifer decided to announce her father's decision herself, without waiting for a scandal, and to persuade her sister to give Veronica at least a year to finish the 11th grade and save some money for rented accommodation. The weather outside was marvelous, and the presence of spring was felt everywhere. A gentle, warm breeze was blowing on our faces. The sound of small brooks and tinkling drops made my ears happy, and the bright sun lightly burned their backs. As Jennifer and Veronica chatted about pleasant things, they came to a local shop on a small patch of land in the heart of the village. It was an old 2-story building with carved wooden paneling on the windows. It seemed that on this Sunday afternoon, silent and as if frozen in time, there was a light inside, despite the clear day. Jennifer pulled the metal door open and entered the cramped room, which was lined on all sides with stalls, and immediately spotted the shop assistant, Mrs. Monica, chatting animatedly with a customer. Veronica said hello loudly and stepped aside to look at a counter of school supplies. Almost anything from butter to appliances could be found in the small shop. "Good afternoon, Jennifer." Mrs. Monica was pleased. "It's been a long time. I thought you were sick." Jennifer was slightly embarrassed and shrugged her shoulders as she said hello to Mrs. Monica and Pamela, who was standing by the cash register with a tightly stuffed cloth bag. "No, not at all. There was just no need." "It's good to have a full fridge," Pamela smiled as she put her shopping away. "There's a lot of stuff in today, so you're just in time. I made a mess, too. I don't know how to carry it." Talkative and always friendly, Jennifer liked the local woman for her directness and kindness. Pamela had long since retired after working at the local paramedic station. For more than 30 years, she helped Jennifer out many times when she needed to administer treatment to her daughter, even after she retired and the paramedic station closed for lack of a specialist. "You take your time," Jennifer asked. "We'll get ourselves together now, Veronica, and help carry the shopping home." "Oh no, it's embarrassing to chase you." Jennifer looked reproachfully at Pamela and, touching her shoulder, said, "It's a pleasure. Besides, it's more fun to walk together." "That's right, Jennifer," Mrs. Monica nodded, leaning against the counter. "Don't be stubborn, Pam. You've been helping everyone for how long? Even though you don't have to. You should know how to accept help when it's offered." "So, Veronica, have you chosen anything? Is this cake tasty?" Veronica asked, pointing her finger at the display case, behind which stood a sponge cake with buttercream. "It's the first time I've seen such a cake. And what's more, it's fresh. You should try it. There's a lot of choice these days. If it's a matter of money, I can lend you some. You always pay me back on time." "No thanks, we'll pay you back right away," Jennifer sighed. "I was wondering what I wanted to ask you. Do you know if anyone in the neighborhood needs an au pair? Residential only." Mrs. Monica's already large eyes widened, highlighted by dark shadows. "You've decided to get a part-time job. But why live in? Veronica and I will need a roof over our heads at least until the end of the school year, and then we'll move to a village or district center," Jennifer admitted. "Wait," Mrs. Monica shook her head. "What about your house?" Reluctantly, choosing her words carefully, Jennifer outlined the situation. Of course, she didn't want rumors about the will to spread in the village, but that would inevitably happen after she and Veronica left the house. When she had finished listening, Mrs. Monica was loudly indignant, and Pamela looked at Jennifer sorrowfully and shook her head. "I apologize for my French," the shop girl blurted out. "Only your sister Irma," Pamela interrupted her. "There's a baby here." "Oh, all right, she has no conscience." "That's what I was going to say. How can you kick your own sister out of your door? What about the grandfather? Granddad? I don't know how to help you. We have people squatting on each other's houses, and some people just abandon them. But they're no longer fit to live in, and we can't find owners. I'd invite you to my place, but I can't. We live together, kids and grandkids." "Jennifer, move in with me," Pamela suddenly said. "I'm all alone in a big house, not counting the 3 cats, of course. There's plenty of room for everyone, and it wouldn't be boring." "Really?" Jennifer was surprised. "Of course you're like family to me." "Well done, Pamela. And tell Irma that if she comes to the village, she must keep her nose out of the shop. Though if I were you, I wouldn't mess with her at all. Get the cake and get the candy." Mrs. Monica was getting a bag of chocolates from under the counter. "No money." "Then take them, my good ones." "No, I won't take it for free," Jennifer replied, smiling and wagging her head. "That's the last thing I need." "All right, you can pay me back later. When are you coming?" "Don't even think about looking for the purse now," Mrs. Monica said. That family. They're nothing but trouble. No order. With a box of cake, fruit and sweets in a bag, Mrs. Monica handed out the treats. "Veronica, come here," she said, and without objection, said goodbye. Jennifer walked out of the shop together with the weighty bag, Pamela and Veronica with the sweets. The bright sunshine from indoors was blinding to the eyes. There were puddles and streams everywhere that they had to jump over. Veronica looked around thoughtfully and remained silent, listening to the conversation of the adults. "Come tomorrow morning and I'll have everything ready for you tonight," said Pamela. "I'll ask Donald to drive the car and don't worry about a thing. There's plenty of room." "Thank you so much." Jennifer thanked her, feeling a stinging sensation in her nose. "I don't know how to thank you. We won't be staying long. We'll move as soon as we find a place. And don't even think about it. You'll live here until Veronica finishes school. We'll get a bite to eat, and then you can decide." Pamela took the bag from Jennifer's hands, not letting her bring it into the house, and for several minutes looked at her as if she wanted to say something, but could not make up her mind. "Well, run along and get your tea, or it may be spring, but you'll get a cold." Jennifer and Veronica walked back towards the house after Pamela's eyes. "Mom, I'm sorry about what I said to you today," Veronica said suddenly. "It's okay. You see, once we got outside and put off unpacking, the problem solved itself. We'll stay with Pamela. We'll help her with her chores. She's a very nice woman." "Yeah, you know I like her. I remember she always had candy in her cupboard for guests. And not just any candy, but chocolate. You'll work, and I'll help around the house." Jennifer smiled. "What about school?" "That's in the morning. And the evening is free." Towards evening, when it was beginning to get dark outside, Pamela phoned and, after talking a little about distractions, asked, "Would you come round for half an hour? Not without Veronica." "Okay," Jennifer said thoughtfully. "Is something wrong?" No, I just want to talk about the move. To be honest, I need some help. Just a little bit of help getting things out, putting things away." "Why didn't you say so in the first place?" "I'm on my way." "Take your time. I'll put the kettle on." Promising not to stay out too late, Jennifer gathered some treats for tea, threw on her coat, and hurried into the center of the village. Pamela lived not far from the square where the two shops were located, the only single-story stone buildings for dozens of kilometers. The house, with its blue shutters decorated with intricate patterns, was a delight to the eye. Behind the small hedge there was always perfect order. Pamela had once kept livestock and used the space for useful crops, but the years had taken their toll. Now she had enough for a small plot. In addition, there was almost no energy left for a whole farm. But despite this, the land did not fall into disrepair and was neatly sown with a lawn. The porch was lined with amazing animal figurines, made from improvised materials during the long winter evenings. When she met Jennifer on the doorstep, Pamela made a fuss, urging her to go straight to the kitchen and get some tea to warm her up. What about the help? Jennifer wondered, taking off her outer garments. First things first, then tea. It's nothing. We can be done in a couple of minutes. Well, I've got some sweets for tea, too. No, why? Veronica said you should try the cake. Jennifer smiled. It's delicious. Pamela's gray-blue eyes sparkled and her lips stretched into a smile. Good. But I'll be doing the catering tomorrow. It's a housewarming party. The sweet smell of strawberries wafted through the spacious kitchen, and cups with tea bags dipped in them were already on the table. Pamela fidgeted about as if she were very worried. When she finally sat down at the table, she was silent for a long time. Stirring the sugar in her tea, Pamela stared thoughtfully straight ahead. Is something wrong? Jennifer couldn't help it. Is it just me, or are you upset? Let's take a personal name, Pamela suggested. Okay, nothing's just wrong. Oh, I've been thinking and thinking, and I don't know how to start. We need to talk about your parents, your father. Jennifer was surprised. If you think I'm angry about what he did, you're wrong. It's not that, Pamela dismissed, rubbing the warm skirt with her fingertips. Before we live under the same roof, I have a secret to tell you that I can't keep any longer. Pamela looked up at Jennifer and added, I hope you understand. I hope you'll understand. Didn't I tell you before? You didn't tell me what it was about. I don't understand anything, Jennifer admitted. Give me time and you'll find out everything, Pamela asked. Your mother Madeline gave birth to Irma very early. She didn't want children at all and told everyone that one should live for one's own pleasure, not for washing nappies and listening to children's cries in the middle of the night. But fate laughed at her. Their meeting with Bernard, who was not yet her husband, almost immediately led to pregnancy. Everything would be all right, the matter would be remedied. But her parents, as soon as they found out about her situation, immediately decided to play a wedding so that it would not be ashamed in front of people. Perhaps Madeline could have avoided the antenatal clinic without asking permission. But then there would have been a huge scandal. Your grandmother was a very powerful woman. It was quickly arranged without asking the young ones. And by spring, Irma was born. Beautiful, just like her mother. I told Madeline at once that the girl was a copy of her. But she got angry with me and confessed in her heart that the child was a disorder. And so it went. Irma grew up with no one to help her, and a character like her mother's. I always thought my parents loved her more than they loved me, Jennifer said. At least my mother made an example of my sister every chance she got. Pamela waved her hand. She made an example of your sister, but she didn't like the girl one bit. Then you came along. By then Madeline was living on her own, working and living well. Bernard was making good money on the farm, and so they had everything except love. Pamela looked at Jennifer strangely. Her look was thoughtful at first, and then became frightened, as if she had remembered something unpleasant. So I was an unplanned and unloved child too? Jennifer asked, not understanding why Pamela was silent for so long. You're different. In what way? I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, but no one else will tell but me. About what? Jennifer wondered. When Irma was 4, your mum fell in love. Not with her husband, who by then was still trying desperately to earn her affection, but with another man, Pamela said, looking away. Tall, statuesque, with character, but 15 years older than Madeline. A lot of people liked him, but not everyone was looking at him. And he'd been married a long time. Except your mum would do anything to be with him. A man may be a man, but he's not blind. Obviously, he realized she liked him. And one day he reciprocated. What was he thinking? I don't know. But they went to mow the fields a lot more often. And they were always seeing each other that summer. I don't know how they didn't catch anyone's eye. And then he decided it was time to split up. Things had gone too far. Why are you telling me this? How do you know all this? Jennifer was worried. Your mother told me when she came to me in the middle of the night, crying. It was cold, the wind was whistling, it was dark. I thought maybe someone had brought a baby or something. And then Madeline let me in. I put the kettle on and she just kept crying and crying. Then she calmed down a bit and picked up her jumper. Your mother had put on a lot of weight by then, but she put it down to unhappy love and a habit of eating her sorrows with baked goods. Pamela continued. Except that the extra kilos were deposited more on her belly. But the cycle was like clockwork. One night something moved, and then another and another. I can imagine how terrified she was when she realized what was going on. She didn't say anything to Bernard, ran out of the house in her clothes and came to me, Pamela whispered, her hand on her stomach. It was you, Jennifer. So I'm not Bernard's real daughter? But what makes her think I'm not his daughter? Jennifer, shut up. Could there be a mistake? No, Madeline knew. She and her husband had been fighting for a long time, so there was no other way. Jennifer was shivering and, trying to fight the chill, asked quietly, "What did she do?" "She made me promise not to say anything. She thought of a way out of it. She played the part of a woman who'd just found out she was pregnant. She apologized. So I wasn't born prematurely." "Of course not. That's ridiculous." But everyone believed it. There was no one who knew anything about the case. Nobody looked at the papers, and Bernard didn't even bother to look at them. The main thing is that the baby was born healthy. And Madeline was so affectionate to him that he just glowed with happiness. He probably believed the baby had saved their marriage. How did he love you? He loved you to bits. He walked with the pram and got up at night. He even took sick leave from work. I was happy to see it from the outside. I thought it was all for the best. But Madeline was the one who ruined it. She had the nerve to yell at me like that. So she confessed, Jennifer blurted out, and then she realized. She was still embarrassed that the man she thought she was related to wasn't. Sure, Bernard had loved her, at least he had before. But what happened after the whole truth was revealed? Looking at Pamela, Jennifer tried to see whether she was condemning or supporting Madeline's action. But her gaze was impenetrable, and it was as if she was trying not to look at Jennifer. Pamela took a deep breath and continued. "The fact that I told the truth was strange, too, when there were no witnesses to the fling. No, of course, Madeline would never have confessed. She didn't play the role of the good wife for long. Bernard was still indifferent to her. She couldn't love her children. And Irma drove her crazy with her jealousy. She saw that her father loved her little sister more. Madeline couldn't stop gossiping about that man's family. There were rumors that he wanted a child, but his wife couldn't get pregnant. But despite that, they're very happy. Was that really the case? Madeline didn't know. It's a small village. It's all out in the open. And there's plenty of gossip. It's hard to know what's true and what isn't. So, unable to wait any longer, Madeline decided to take advantage of the child and have an affair again. Here she is, her own daughter, growing up right next door. And the older she gets, the more she resembles her father. But the plan failed. That man wouldn't even listen to her. So Madeline thought of nothing better than to write him a letter that would make even the iciest heart grow cold, and handed it to him personally. But there was no reply for a long time, so another envelope was sent. And then another and another. Until at last there was a long-awaited message, which at once put a fat point in the future of the novel. He refused to meet, and he told her not to write any more letters so as not to disgrace herself. Not his name, not hers. This was the only letter she saved. Soaked with bitter tears, she kept it in her personal belongings for several years, unable to burn it. Friendly dialogue as before did not happen, although they saw each other regularly. But when they met, the man nodded discreetly, and without saying a word, averted his eyes. Was he ashamed? Madeline did not know, but she kept the letter as if she still hoped. It seemed as if this was the end of it. Pamela shook her head as if she saw an angry man who had been deceived by his wife for so many years, and added quietly, "You had just turned 14 at the time. Can you imagine how Bernard felt? To believe for so many years that his wife loved you and you were growing up to be his blood daughter. And then when he found out the truth, there was no one to blame but Madeline. That man was long gone." Jennifer, stroking the former paramedic's blossoming eyes, asked, "According to the documents, that's when he wrote the will for Irma. Wait a minute, who was the man my mother was dating?" It turns out he lived here in the township, and I might remember seeing him. I think you met him, Pamela replied. It was a pity he left early. It was Edward Richardson, my older brother. With that, Pamela slowly pulled out a stack of yellowed envelopes from the kitchen table drawer and handed them to her. These are your mother's letters. He didn't burn or throw them away either. I don't know why he kept them. Maybe he really cared about Madeline. He was just afraid to tell her so he wouldn't break up the family. Maybe these letters are yours now anyway. Where did you get them from? Jennifer asked dazedly, still not believing what was happening. She certainly remembered Edward Richardson, who lived a few doors down from them. She knew his very reserved, overly wise wife, who chased the local kids away from her apple trees. But to think that this was her father, and that the paramedic who treated the whole village was in fact a close relative, how could the little girl think of it? Her brother had given it to her shortly before. He asked me to keep it and give it to you if I had the chance. You are, after all, his only daughter. Rosemary, Edward's wife, was never able to give him a child. I heard about how Bernard found out from Madeline. When the truth came out, your mother came running to me. Pamela shook her head and said quietly, she wanted to talk. And I was the only one who knew how she cried. She said that if she could turn back time, she would never have married Bernard. She loved Edward so much. Was it a joke to live almost side by side for so many years and pretend nothing had happened? Pamela sighed. I don't know what Bernard and Madeline decided between them after the scandal. Only he's changed a lot. He became silent and indifferent to everything, but he kept to himself, and there were no rumors. Jennifer held the stack of envelopes with trembling hands, recognizing her mother's handwriting on them. She couldn't dare take the letters out. And Rosemary? I don't know anything about her fate. When her brother died, Rosemary left the village and never came back, Pamela continued. So you and I are related, Jennifer whispered. But why did you keep silent for so many years? How could I tell? Pamela waved her hands and smiled slightly. If I had opened my mouth, who would have been better off? My brother asked me to keep quiet while you were in front of your father. Besides, I was young myself when it all started. Madeline was very sorry. After all these years, to be honest, I'd like to put it behind her. But today, when I heard how Bernard and Irma treated you, I couldn't help it. And Irma, did she know about it too? I don't think so. I don't know, though. She's not acting like herself right now. She's always disliked me, Jennifer admitted, remembering her sister's disgruntled face the last time they'd met. And relatives sometimes become strangers, Pamela sighed. And you, Veronica, are the closest to me now. I haven't had any children, though I've been married. I have no relatives left, so you can live here as long as you like. I'm only glad. She smiled and took the guest's hand. Jennifer felt a lump in her throat at that affectionate look and friendly smile. No one but her father and her own daughter had ever treated her so well. Pamela nodded and said, "Thank you for telling me. And the letters? I don't know what to do with them. If you want to read them, read them. And if you don't want to, throw them in the oven and don't regret it." She did. She stared at Jennifer for a few minutes, as if trying to find something on her face. You know, you do look a lot like Edward. I have pictures of him when he was young. If you want to see them, I'll show them to you. When she agreed, Pamela rose to her feet and beckoned Jennifer to follow her into the large room that served as her bedroom, study, and living room at the same time. It was homely and cozy. Green curtains with small white flowers covered the windows. Along the walls, there were 2 tall cabinets with glass doors, on the shelves of which books on medicine neighboring with plump volumes of love novels and classic literature. To the right stood a small sofa covered with a checked plaid, and next to it a table and a few chairs that had served as the former paramedic's workplace in recent years. After sitting Jennifer down on the couch, Pamela pulled a thick photo album out of the cupboard and sat it on her lap. The black and white, slightly faded by time, and the color, more recent pictures captured the happiest moments of her life. No one but Pamela, Jennifer knew. When the page turned, however, she was surprised to see a face that vaguely resembled her reflection in the mirror. The same curve of her eyebrows, the special sparkle in her eyes, the slightly upturned nose, the familiar ears. "You look very much alike, don't you?" Pamela smiled. "Edward here is a little younger than you are now." What was that genuine smile he had? It's a pity we didn't see it more often. Was it hard on them? "Why?" Jennifer echoed, keeping her eyes on the photograph. "Because of his wife, Rosemary," Pamela sighed. "She's not a pretty girl, and she's not very bright either. But Edward loved her very much. So there was a reason for that. At first, their family was quiet and peaceful, the envy of the world. And then Rosemary started thinking about having a baby. And she was so obsessed with it that nothing else mattered to her. Only it didn't happen. Several times in the very beginning, she went to the district center, lay down to keep, and came home already all in tears and without a baby. What was to blame for that? I don't know. She didn't trust me and didn't tell me. How many illnesses are there? In a couple of years, the cheerful Rosemary turned into a taut as a string, an always disgruntled woman threat of the local children. The way she chased them away from the fence to keep them from snatching apples and ripping berries, it was maddening. Edward, too, was walking in the dark. That's when he had his affair with Madeline. It wasn't nice, of course. It's not for me to judge. I remember her, Jennifer murmured, looking at the thin woman who was hugging Edward. Only she seemed very stern and old to me then. Children see things differently. I can imagine what you thought of me when you were little, Pamela grinned. The children even called Madeline a witch. Yes, they did, because she used to complain to her parents if anyone picked berries near their house. How could I have forgotten them? And Edward's gone? When? When I was about 10, maybe? Rosemary left the village almost immediately after the house was sold. Well, we've been talking a lot. It's time for you to go home. Is Veronica going to be worried? Jennifer wanted to ask something, but instantly forgot everything and looked at her watch and gasped. Really, it's time. But what about helping you? That's what I'm here for. Pamela sighed and waved her hands. I've already dealt with everything myself. I just wanted to talk to you without Irma. So I cleaned up a little. By the way, we agreed to address each other on a first-name basis. It's a little awkward to use you. Oh, come on. Am I that old? Pamela laughed good-naturedly. Donald and I will come to you after 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm not much use to him, but I want to help in any way I can. And don't worry about anything, we'll move everything. And then we'll have a housewarming party, Jennifer said. Thank you. I mean you, Pamela. You're welcome, she said. Pamela waved after Jennifer as she walked to the door, reluctant to leave the porch for the warmth of the house. Jennifer could hardly make out the road as she slid through the puddles. It was getting dark out, and the lights in the village left much to be desired. Where there were lampposts, there were burnt-out lamps hanging over the road for weeks, and no one was in a hurry to replace them. The cool spring wind was getting under my clothes, whipping my face, making me shrink and tangle in my scarf. The thoughts in his head were jumbled, changing from one to the next, and the pictures from the past that had been in Pamela's album for so long appeared before his eyes. Which reminded me of Edward. Nothing much, really, except that he was married. He worked on the farm, like most of the locals. And his neighbor was very fond of the boys, and let them have as many apples and berries as they wanted. In secret from his wife, Jennifer could not remember if he had ever spoken to him on a heart-to-heart basis, and whether he had singled her out among the crowd of kids. When it happened, she did not even realize that they were connected. To be honest, Pamela's confession made her feel a little uncomfortable. Why hadn't Edward said anything, or even hinted at anything? Could a 10-year-old girl take such a truth seriously? More likely she would have just called her friends or her father. And Bernard, why would he do that? Was it her fault? Didn't she love her father to the last? Hadn't she nursed him back to health even when everyone, including his flatmate, had given up on him? Jennifer shook her head, struggling to shake herself out of her troubled thoughts, and approached the house, pulling open the wooden door, which immediately resounded with a long, pitiful creak. Monday was another day off for Jennifer's family. Going to work, Jennifer responded to her daughter's request and informed the school that she wouldn't be in today either. After 8, with the sun already peeking through the windows, a car pulled up in front of the house. Donald, the man Pamela was talking about, was a local businessman of sorts in the village. He took meat, milk, and cottage cheese to the district center. Some of the goods were his own. It was not for nothing that he kept a large number of cattle all year round. The other part was bought from local people who did not want to spend time and money traveling to the city. Broad-shouldered, loud-voiced, and wearing work clothes, he entered Bernard's house as confidently as if he had been here every day. "Jennifer, hello," Donald exclaimed. "Well, girls, Veronica, are you here too? You're right not to go to school. Mummy needs to help." Veronica resented and hid behind her things, while Jennifer, after saying hello to everyone, took charge, though it was hard for her to do so. Donald carried all the boxes that were a little heavier than the grocery bag. And Pamela, who had volunteered to help, was told to watch every corner of the house to make sure that nothing of value had been forgotten. Half an hour later, all the things were put into the car, and Donald went aside to rest a little and talk to one of the buyers on the phone. "What about the geraniums?" Pamela exclaimed, waving her hand at the window. "It's so bright. It's nice. Can we keep it? It's a shame." "Yes, but where to put it? It's full of flowers." Jennifer sighed, looking at her once home. "Should we give it to someone?" "I don't think so. I'll go and get it, and there'll be room in the window. And I'll come with you." Veronica came along. "Come on, darling, is there anything else of great value?" Jennifer looked away from them and turned away. She didn't want to rub her soul and look at the place where she had spent all her childhood. Leaving this place was sorrowful. Besides, she knew that bad times awaited the house now. "And Irma?" Jennifer asked, surprised to see a red foreign car heading in their direction. It wasn't a local car, which meant that someone was visiting relatives. The others in the village rarely looked in, keeping their eyes on the foreign car. Jennifer didn't even notice when the car swerved and came to a stop right next to Donald's car. What happened next seemed like the fragments of a bad dream, because a few seconds later, a painfully familiar figure with a dark mop of hair emerged from the car. Irma. "Hi, sis," she said, slamming the car door shut and stretching. "I'm tired of driving. The road's a nightmare. You're not at work, are you?" I stopped by the school and they said Jennifer was taking the day off. Irma glanced at the car full of boxes and knots and then added, "What's that? Are you going somewhere? Or have you decided to redecorate?" "Clearing the house for sale," Jennifer said dryly, hardly able to cope with her excitement. "I thought I'd leave the keys at our place by the porch, but since you're here, you can lock up." Holding out the bunch of keys to her sister, Jennifer looked into her eyes, but there was neither surprise nor regret in her eyes. "Thank you, of course," Irma murmured, looking at the key ring. "But what's the rush? Have you forgotten our last conversation? Why are you hanging on to words?" "Yes, I wasn't in the mood, and I said a lot of things, but that's no different." I came here for a reason. You don't pick up the phone or even hang up. You should, 'cause I can't sell this house right now. Taxes, you know. And there's no buyer yet. So I won't kick anyone out. You can live here. For a fee, of course. Jennifer rounded her eyes. I don't know what to think. How much do I owe you? Irma laughed at first, as if she hadn't expected such a question. Then she said out loud the amount of money that would cost Jennifer half her salary. It's certainly cheaper than renting a house like this in the district center, Irma added. Irma thought, looking away. Thank you, Jennifer hissed. But I've already found a place to live. Pamela's, I suppose. Irma laughed. She's the one who let you in now, and tomorrow she'll kick you out. So you know, how can you keep anything secret around here? Jennifer sighed. Well, you're right to know. We're moving in with Pamela. You're in your repertoire, Irma snorted. Why would she want you in her old age? Maybe because Pamela and I aren't strangers. Jennifer said slowly, keeping her eyes on her sister. Irma shuddered and, unable to control her emotions, looked at Jennifer fearfully. Her gaze, always smug and haughty, was filled with a fear Jennifer had never seen before. At that moment, the cheerful voices of Veronica and Pamela could be heard over the hedge as they appeared to be putting something out on the porch. So you know everything? Jennifer asked regretfully. As she studied her older sister's pale face, she realized with horror that not only her father, but her sister as well, had been deceiving her all this time. What are you talking about? Irma interrupted. Jennifer kept her eyes on Irma. Tell the truth as it is. If I knew. So what? How? Bernard told you? Irma rolled her eyes defiantly. She was silent for a few seconds, and then, with ill-concealed resentment, she blurted out. How could they have told me if I hadn't found out? You were always the favorite, and I was just a dishwasher and an errand girl. You should have seen Bernard's face when he read that letter. And everything was supposed to be different afterwards. If it wasn't for his stubbornness. I don't understand. Jennifer frowned. I found that letter, I did. Irma exclaimed. All my childhood I thought Madeline and Bernard were not my birth parents. That could explain a lot when you were praised or just ignored. I was bombarded with a barrage of complaints on and off. Even though in the reflection of the mirror I found, to my disappointment, a clear resemblance to my mother. I still wanted to believe that somewhere out there was another real mum who would truly love, so I started looking for evidence. I asked neighbors, looked at old pictures and photo albums. I looked for documents to confirm my suspicions. And I found something else, the very letter from a neighbor that my mother had hidden in a secret place where no one would think to look. I read it over a dozen times before I checked everything. And then I slipped the envelope to my father so he could find out what kind of wife and youngest daughter he had inherited. But why? What were you trying to achieve? Jennifer asked. For my parents to get divorced so we'd be without Dad. Irma smiled with just her lips. You would have stayed. I thought when he found out the truth he'd divorce Madeline and we'd live together. If it hadn't been for that affair, I'd have been the only daughter I loved. When you came along, it was as if they'd both forgotten I existed. Mother was never a gentle person, but even when the truth came out, he still loved you. That's what made it all go wrong. Bernard told me to keep quiet if I wanted to live in his house and inherit part of the wreck. He and Madeline had a row and ignored each other for days until I left. Is that why you ran away? Jennifer whispered, looking at her sister. For some reason, Jennifer felt sorry for Irma, who, even after many years, couldn't remember her childhood without excessive emotion. Her eyes filled with tears, and her fists clenched tightly with resentment at her parents and at her, Jennifer. It was a blessing to have a place to go, Irma blurted out. And my husband-to-be was the closest thing I had to family. I never wanted to speak to Bernard or Madeline again. My father got my number and started calling, but I kept hanging up. And then he sent me a letter, which told me that in the future I would be the owner of the house. Even my mother did not have a square meter, except for a propiska and a couple of knots with things she had nothing. And when you arrived with that piece of paper, Irma grinned. You're right, I could hardly resist telling you. Why did you do it now? So you'd know why I'm so lucky to have an inheritance. You used to be so lucky, and now everything's changed. I came to see you when you moved in. It wasn't hard to find out the time and date in front of the local gossip mongers. You're right, Jennifer said calmly. Honestly, I've always loved my sister and wanted to be her closest friend. And that woman who thinks only of herself and now stands in front of me, I don't know. There is no more Irma, who protected me from the neighborhood bullies and told me goodnight stories. I don't need another sister. The house is all yours now, waiting for a mistress. Sell it if you want, live in it if you want. I don't care. I won't rent it, and I won't ask you to live here. Without waiting for a response, Jennifer walked towards the gate and shouted, Pamela, Veronica, we have to go. We're on our way, she heard from behind her. The door slammed, and then, with a loud roar, the small car turned onto the smooth road and sped up the street. Who was that? Pamela asked, holding a pot of geraniums. Tourist, Jennifer said, trying to speak as calmly as possible. They got a little lost. How did they end up in the middle of nowhere? It happens. The geraniums are really nice. I think I might even know where to put it. Discreetly picking up the bunch of keys that remained lying beside the puddle where Irma had been standing, Jennifer locked the door and put the key in another place near the porch. Leaving the house was much easier now. No memories of bygone days bound her to this desolate, lifeless place. And with good reason. Sitting in the back of the truck and occasionally bouncing on the bumps, Jennifer thought about her family. Madeline was only interested in her own life. She cared little for the feelings of her daughters or her husband. But the secret love for a man who lived a few houses down the street did not give Jennifer rest. She couldn't reveal the truth about her affair because of Edward, who was a bit of a windbag. What if he had chosen his wife Rosemary over her? And Bernard didn't allow her to return without a roof over her head, the help of her parents and the support of her friends. Madeline wouldn't have been able to cope. And Bernard. Of course he loved both daughters and, despite Irma's claims, he adored her no less than Jennifer. Except that she was older, and therefore Irma was always more in demand. Perhaps the decision to leave her the house had been made hastily. But in the time Bernard had spent with Jennifer, when he was already ill, he had not changed his will. So there must have been a reason. What it was, Jennifer didn't know. But it was pointless to be angry with a man who was no longer there. He would always be a father to her, unlike Edward. And could Edward, who pretended to be just neighbors, be a real dad? There was something else that was bothering Jennifer. What did she want to find out from Pamela? But a little later. After unpacking the boxes and getting a little more comfortable in the small room the landlady had given them, Jennifer set off for the shop. Pamela and Veronica soon found a common language and sat down to play cards. There was no hurry to get anywhere. Walking down the winding street leading into the center of town, Jennifer looked around with interest and clutched her present for Mrs. Monica. To the right and left lined the wooden houses with colorful curtains on the windows. The midday sun was shining brightly in the back, and there wasn't a single cloud in the sky. The day promised to be quite warm, and it felt good. Mrs. Monica, sitting behind the counter, was reading another love novel with rapt attention. When she saw the customer with a pot of geraniums, she immediately smiled. "Jennifer, have you moved in?" "What a beautiful flower you have," she exclaimed. "Good afternoon." You already know, Jennifer smiled, placing the flower next to the cash register. "It's a gift for you," Jennifer exclaimed. "Oh, thank you so much. I'll take it home. I've wanted a red geranium for a long time," Mrs. Monica said. "And the whole village has been buzzing about your move since last night. I wonder who told them." "I don't know," she continued. "I'll let you in on the secret," Jennifer smiled. "There's no such thing as gossip these days. There was talk of seeing Irma today, and with you. But that's certainly not true. Why would she be here?" Jennifer nodded demurely. "I'll have a fresh cake, a packet of black tea, and some fruit," she said. "That'll be me," quick Mrs. Monica said, and, placing the pot of geraniums in the most prominent position, began to pick up the bag of goods. After paying for her purchase, Jennifer slipped away from the chatty saleswoman. When she returned to Pamela's house, she was surprised to find her and Veronica looking at books. More than a dozen volumes with colorful covers were lying on a small table in front of the sofa, and Veronica was chatting animatedly with the lady of the house. "Jennifer, did you know that Veronica is interested in medicine? Yeah, we have a couple of books she likes, and she's better at biology and chemistry than literature," said Pamela. "Actually, I want to be a doctor," Veronica blurted out. "If you have a dream, you should pursue it," said Pamela. "Jennifer, how would you like me to study with her? You need to know more than the school curriculum to get into medicine." "Yes, of course," Jennifer nodded. "But if we don't get in on the budget, let's not panic." "It'll come through, you'll see," Pamela said. "Okay," Jennifer sighed. "I wanted to go to medical school after school, but I couldn't afford to go to the district center. And my parents wouldn't let me go." Pamela looked at her in surprise and smiled enigmatically. Then, noticing the bag of sweets, she asked, "Set the table, my dears. Donald will be here soon. Shall we have tea?" It had been 3 months since Jennifer and Veronica had left home. Spring had reluctantly given way to the sunny and long-awaited summer months. Everything around them was transformed, and the gray, seemingly lifeless village took on a new color, immersed in other concerns. The children had been out in the morning and scattered around the village in small groups. Veronica, on the other hand, spent almost all her days at home reading books. "I wish she'd gone for a walk with the girls," sighed Pamela. "The holidays will fly by, and you don't get any rest. You don't even see the sun." "I had the opportunity this morning," Veronica mumbled, opening her notebook of exam questions. "I'll manage. And after lunch I'll go and weed the onions." "Jennifer, is it really such a good idea to huddle inside when the weather's so nice outside?" Pamela looked hopefully at Jennifer, who was also busy reading a fascinating book. "Veronica, Pamela's right. The heat in our area is coming to an end so quickly," grinned her daughter. "What about me? If we go together," Pamela laughed. She let out a chuckle, but then she realized it. "Veronica is talking. Let's all go to the gazebo. We're still a long way from dinner, but we're thirsty. Did I make morsels for nothing?" Having sent everyone out of the house, Pamela rushed to the gazebo, a bench with a small table and an improvised awning made of improvised materials. There were already glasses, a decanter, and a plate covered with a towel on the checkered tablecloth. "So this is a conspiracy?" Jennifer wondered. "Let's sit on the bench. How else would I lure you out of the house? You've done your job. High five for the books. You have to be able to relax, too," Pamela said. "Try the pies, the bigger ones with cabbage and the smaller ones with onions and eggs. A neighbor gave me a present." "Which one?" Pamela laughed and added reluctantly, "Rosemary, the mother from the shop." "Did she come in?" Jennifer wondered. Yes, it was this morning. She asked if we needed a trip to the district center. Donald's going away on business tomorrow. Maybe I should take you with me. Mom, go. Veronica cheered, taking a large baked pie from her plate. You wanted to buy a couple more books from the reading list, to look at stationery for the new school year, said Pamela. All right, I'll go. Don't worry about me, Jennifer said. Maybe you can come with me. You can pick out your own notebooks and diary if you want to. No, Veronica said. I promised Chris and I would go out tomorrow. Aunt Pamela says you should get more sun. And take the diary you like. We like the same things, don't we? Pamela nodded quickly and, hiding her smile, went on with the cakes. Jennifer watched her glance back and forth between her and Veronica and felt as if there was a catch in those glances. What was Rosemary doing here so early? And if she did, why didn't she stop by to say hello? Donald's mother had been visiting Pamela a lot lately, even though, according to the landlady, they'd never been close friends before. And Donald? No, of course he's a good, responsible, and hard-working man, always ready to help, perhaps even more than simple neighborly relations require. Jennifer had spoken to him very rarely before the move, but now she saw him every day. It was very uncomfortable for her to go back to him for help. And to be honest, it was even a little scary. Her first and, unfortunately, last relationship with Veronica's father had ended in divorce. Perhaps that was why she was so reluctant to get attached to anyone again, only to find herself. No, it wasn't even worth thinking about. Besides, Donald was much older, and why would he want a divorced woman with a daughter? When she snapped out of her thoughts, Jennifer tried to pretend that nothing had happened. However, she decided to go into town. She had no other way to get to the district center. There had been no buses from the village for more than 10 years, and there was no desire to go with someone else. After sitting in the gazebo for a while, the women went about their business, and Veronica went to see her friend, whom she had not seen for several days. That evening, after finishing chores, Jennifer and Pamela sat on the front porch to relax and enjoy the sunset. The heat had subsided. The heat of the day had already subsided, and the sky was so amazing they didn't want to go inside the house at all. The sun was slowly sinking to the horizon and was no longer as searing and blinding as before, warming the earth with its warm rays. It painted the sky in fanciful colors, promising an imminent reunion. Didn't you regret moving here? Pamela asked suddenly, watching the birds flitting about the garden. Of course not. I don't know what we would have done if it hadn't been for you. It's good that everything turned out all right. It's too early to tell, she said. Irma still hadn't shown up. Jennifer shook her head. She hadn't told anyone about the unpleasant conversation with her sister, and the memory of Irma's words made her still feel guilty. It was even strange if she was in such a hurry to come into her inheritance and dispose of it. What procrastinates doesn't show was the house as it was, standing shuttered. Yeah, I don't think it's ever going to come back to life. Even the land here is given away for nothing, let alone a neglected plot. Well, it'll be better, Jennifer said quickly. I don't have any more family except you and Veronica. Plucking a blade of grass from the porch, she was silent for a few seconds, then came to life. I've been wanting to ask you for a long time, now that we're talking, and can you clarify something for me? I'm listening. Right. Why didn't Edward care? I can't imagine how he could live next door to me and pretend like nothing was going on. If only it were that simple, darling. Edward really did care a lot. There was nothing he could do. He had fallen out of love with Madeline, and he felt guilty in front of Rosemary. So he couldn't leave and tell everyone the truth. What would happen to Irma, Bernard? And I'm not even talking about Rosemary. She had nowhere else to go, and her health problems started to flare up under the stress. She never had a baby. Edward was hesitant to leave you his house for the same reason. Rosemary would have found out about the betrayal and been left with nothing. So he suffered. Maybe that's why he got sick. He was a kind man. He wanted everyone around him to be happy. He probably thought Bernard and Madeline would look after you, help you. If Bernard hadn't found the letter, maybe things would have turned out differently. "I'm sorry it had to be this way," Jennifer murmured. I could see why Edward hadn't said anything. And Bernard? I don't know what I don't know. Maybe he was afraid, maybe he thought you'd feel differently about him or his mother. Now I can't find the truth. By the way, since we're being honest, I've got a question too. What is it? Where are you going to go to school? Medical school, of course. In a year, you'll be able to study with Veronica, and then you'll be on your way. It's always been your dream. Yes, I'm not out of my mind. And I remember what you said the day you moved in. Yes, I did. But when was that? Jennifer was embarrassed. I'm too old for such drastic decisions. What are you thinking? Pamela splashed her hands. I'm going to marry her off, and she says old. After 30, life begins. We remember her words. We have to try, so that when the train really leaves, we won't regret it. Marriage? Jennifer, don't get off topic. You can't go anywhere without an education these days. Besides, there's a serious shortage of medical professionals around here. If you go to school, they'll take you off your hands. And there's a roof over your head. Of course, it's not a palace, but what's rich? We built this house with our own hands. Jennifer smiled at the good-natured expression on Pamela's face. All right, I'll give it a try. If it doesn't work out, at least I'll study. It's much more fun to study tickets together. That's great. What about the wedding? Jennifer, oh, I'm just saying. She looked at her wristwatch and gasped. It's bedtime. It's time to get ready. And we're just sitting here. Veronica, go and fall asleep over your biology. I'll go and have a look, said Pamela. Mum, congratulations, rejoiced Veronica. Didn't you believe it would work out? Jennifer blushed deeply and looked around. The small cafe near the medical college, which had recently become her home, was very noisy. Young girls were happily celebrating their long-awaited diplomas. And it seemed like only yesterday they had received their student ID cards in their hands. A familiar male figure without his usual work clothes, and a blue shirt and trousers, appeared at the cashier's desk. Donald looked more like a respectable businessman than a backwoodsman. As he strode confidently toward the table, he kept his eyes on Jennifer, a look that made her hot and cold. Fixing her hair, which Pamela had carefully arranged, she held her breath, trying to calm herself down a little. Never before had Jennifer dealt with men like Donald. It seemed impossible to embarrass him or throw him off balance. Among other things, he was very clever and noticed the smallest changes in the mood of the interlocutor. That meant he could easily guess what was going through Jennifer's mind. At least she thought so. The order will be ready in 20 minutes, Donald said. In the meantime, I suggest a drink. Tea, juice, or something stronger. Juice, perhaps? Pamela asked, turning to Jennifer. We can find something stronger at home. Yes, a neutral juice would be better, Donald said. I ordered her something else. For our graduate, just a moment. Jennifer wanted to ask what he meant, but Donald was already gone. Heading towards the exit of the hall, he was instantly lost in the crowd. What did he mean? Jennifer stretched out. Mum, Uncle Donald has a surprise for you. Veronica blurted out and, catching Pamela's leering look, shut her mouth. You know something and you don't say anything? Jennifer wondered. Pamela shrugged her shoulders plaintively, and then Jennifer didn't even immediately realize what was happening. As if out of nowhere, A bouquet of roses appeared beside her, large, scarlet and scented with an intoxicating fragrance. The intoxicating scent filled the space between Pamela and Jennifer. Until now, Jennifer had only seen such large bouquets in the cinema and in the windows of beautiful but expensive flower shops. Now she thought it was a dream. Or had someone just mixed up the tables? And the flowers are actually intended for the beautiful graduate, but not for her. But the man standing next to her was not a young man, but a tall, broad-shouldered man whom Jennifer would never mistake for anyone else. "Is that for me?" she muttered, feeling a vague urge to pinch her arm. "Yes, insanely expensive and so beautiful, beautiful flowers for a beautiful woman," Donald nodded. "It all makes sense to me. I hope you like roses?" Yes, of course, she took the weighty bouquet in her hands and was about to say that she had never received roses or even daisies from a man until now. But she stopped herself just in time. Her ex-husband, Ashley, thought it was pointless to give flowers that grew on every corner all summer long. "You want a bouquet, go to the vegetable garden, dear, and yourself," he said when the next holiday came. However, Jennifer did have one bouquet that Ashley had personally presented to her, her wedding bouquet. But it had been so long ago, like a lifetime ago. "Thank you," Jennifer whispered. "They smell so nice. I'm glad you like them. I'll tell you a secret. There'll be another present waiting for you at home. So don't get too drunk," he laughed and went to the cash register to get juice. "Mum, they're gorgeous," Veronica admired, leaning over to the bouquet. "Yes, but they're insanely expensive. I don't feel comfortable getting gifts like that," Jennifer mumbled. "Jennifer, come on," Pamela waved her hand. "The man worked hard to choose, and money is nothing. Besides, it's a very special gift. To think we have a whole medical dynasty, 2 nurses. And there's a future pediatrician," on the way she winked at Veronica. "I still have to study and study," Veronica sighed. "Time will fly by quickly. How long has your mum been afraid of entrance exams?" Pamela grinned, and then she said thoughtfully, "I keep thinking, you will be in the city, and what should I do in the village? It's boring alone. So we will come on weekends. Besides, you're not alone there. Nicholas is there night and day," Pamela said. Veronica blushed instantly at the mention of her boyfriend. But he didn't sleep over. If he did, nothing happened. She tried to justify herself. "Don't shout, it's a young thing. We were like that ourselves. The main thing is to study, don't forget. And then the sessions come quickly, so you won't be bored. Before you know it, time will fly by. And you already have a diploma." "Yeah, married. I'm gonna go help Uncle Donald." Veronica jumped out of her seat. "There's a lot of glasses. I can't carry them alone." Waiting until Veronica was out of sight, Jennifer said, "You've embarrassed her, or she wouldn't be thinking of marriage herself. She asked me if the name Veronica would sound good with the last name Clinton." "I think very much so," Pamela dismissed. "I'm not sorry, let them go out. Besides, Nicholas is a good young man, simple, also from the province. He achieves everything on his own and adores Veronica. The main thing is that they don't become parents before the time. I've been talking to her. You should have seen how she blushed. And you, too." "I blushed just as much when Donald came round. And for good reason, it made my heart race. Don't push him away. You can't find a man like him these days. He's kind, gallant, clever, and with hands of gold," she murmured, trying not to meet Pamela's gaze. "I'm not repulsive. It's just an expensive bouquet. Nothing is too small for a beautiful, kind woman. And if Ashley didn't realize that and left his wife and daughter behind, then he's worthless. I take it he never showed his face again." "No, don't need to. Veronica doesn't remember him. But I told her the whole story. I'm done with family secrets. She says the real father is the one who raised her. So he's just a stranger to her. Jennifer shrugged and looked away thoughtfully, remembering her old life. I hope she gets a good daddy soon. If Mummy doesn't freak out about getting married, Pamela said, and looked at Jennifer pointedly. There was a mischievous sparkle in the older woman's eyes, and her lips stretched into a smile. Won't she be frightened? Jennifer said slowly. I'll go and help. But where are the flowers? I'll look after them, Pamela promised. They're so beautiful. It makes me happy. Jennifer took a few steps away from the table and turned round. Pamela was looking at the roses with rapt attention, holding the bouquet carefully, as if it were very dear to her. The scene made her heart feel so warm that Jennifer smiled involuntarily. She was right. After 30, life was just beginning. And it was good that there were no more secrets. Vanessa froze, looking at Michael and his mistress. If he knew what a surprise she had in store for him. MP4. Vanessa came on a business trip to another city on company business for a fortnight. Her mood was at zero because she did not want to go here at all. But orders from the bosses, as they say, are not negotiable. So Vanessa was irritated, and any little thing could make her mad. She got out of the train carriage and looked around. God, what a shithole is this, the girl muttered. No markings, no signposts. Where do they have an exit into town here? You're absolutely right, came from beside Vanessa. Out of surprise, the girl flinched. Turning around, she saw a young man standing next to her. I'm sorry, what did you say? Vanessa asked. I'm saying that this city is far from the standards of world tourism. Looking at the girl, the stranger smiled. No greeters who are happy to see you, no signpost to show you the way. Are you a visitor too? Vanessa inquired. Yes, I'm a commuter. Just now we were traveling with you on the same train, the man replied, continuing to smile. I'm here on business for the firm, and I'm also here on business for the firm. Sad, she sighed. It turns out that you and I are unfortunate friends. Does it turn out that way? Shrugging, the stranger said. My name is Michael, by the way. Vanessa, the girl, smiled and shook the outstretched hand. So let's go find a way out into the city. Let's go. Michael easily picked up his traveling bag, which lay near his feet. The man then reached out to grab Vanessa's suitcase. Let me help you. Gladly, the young people set off in search of a way out into the city. As they exited the station building, Michael looked at his companion. Vanessa, where are you going? He inquired. I want to get settled at the Dawn Hotel for starters, and then I'll be traveling on company business. It is not otherwise than fate itself has decided to bring our lives together, said the man enthusiastically. What do you mean? The girl was taken aback. I, too, am staying at the same hotel, and I'm on my way to the same place right now. Oh, that's wonderful, Vanessa rejoiced. There will be someone to spend the evenings with. That's a great idea, Michael supported the girl. He caught a taxi and they drove to the hotel. Once inside the hotel building, the couple went to their rooms, agreeing to meet in the lobby in the evening. Vanessa had been on pins and needles all day. She was nervous about her upcoming meeting with Michael. She liked this man, and she wanted to continue communication with him after the business trip. It so happened that Vanessa 6 months ago broke up with her young man, with whom she had been dating for more than 5 years. The girl painfully experienced the breakup, so she tried to avoid communicating with men, and Michael managed to charm her to bring her back to life, so to speak. In the evening, when Vanessa went out into the lobby, Michael was already waiting for her. He handed the girl a bouquet of red roses. Beautiful flowers for a beautiful girl, he smiled. Thank you, Vanessa replied. She was pleased by Michael's words. Shall we go? The couple walked through the spring night city, which no longer seemed unfriendly to Vanessa. On the contrary, she thought it was made for romance. Lilac bushes were blooming all around, which made the air smell of love and magic. Looking at her companion, the girl realized that she had fallen in love. Michael completely met her requirements for men. Returning to the hotel, Vanessa realized that she did not want to part with him. It's a shame our walk is over, Michael said sadly. Me too. Michael. Do you believe in fate? The man asked suddenly. I don't. I do, as of today, Michael said eagerly. He looked into his companion's eyes. You and I lived in the same town and didn't even know each other existed until we came to this town. And now I realize that it was fate itself that brought us together. Do you agree? Yes, replied a happy Vanessa. Now we just have to be together. Michael didn't have time to finish because Vanessa kissed him passionately. They spent the night together. Waking up the next morning, Vanessa pulled herself up. She had never felt such a sense of happiness before. The man she loved was sleeping next to her. Suddenly, the girl frowned. Vanessa was afraid of the feeling she had for this man. What if she was in a hurry? What if his wife and children were waiting for him at home? The girl realized that she didn't know anything about him. Having thought of nothing better, Vanessa quickly dressed, gathered her things, and left Michael's room. Walking into her room, the first thing the girl did was open the window to her room, letting in the scent of lilacs. Taking a deep breath, Vanessa smiled. The scent of lilacs always filled her with romance. The girl went into the shower, standing under the hot jets of water. She thought back to last night. Vanessa had twofold feelings. Undoubtedly, she was happy, and at the same time she felt guilty that she had trusted him without knowing him. She was ashamed of her behavior. Although, on the other hand, her mother, Mrs. Catherine, had always told her daughters that it was better to take a risk once and be happy all your life than to sit around regretting the missed opportunity. And Vanessa and her younger sister Jessica remembered this admonition for life. But what if this moment had come and Vanessa had done the right thing? Michael had said that fate had brought them together. Vanessa stepped out of the shower. She put her thoughts and feelings in order and calmed down a little. Looking at the clock, the girl began to get ready for work. Today in the firm, where she came on a business trip, there would be an important seminar on further strategy and development of the company. She was distracted from packing by a knock on the door. Deciding that it was bringing breakfast to the room, the girl opened the door. Hello, come in. Vanessa was silent for half a word. An angry Michael stood in front of her. Vanessa, what's wrong? The man asked, stepping into the room. Nothing. How nothing? Michael continued angrily. We had such a great night together last night, and then you ran out on me this morning. I have to get ready for a seminar. So I left. Vanessa tried to put as indifferent a tone to her voice as possible. Sweetheart, you have to move in with me. The man walked over to the girl and hugged her. I woke up this morning thinking you were near me, and it turns out you've left me. You can't imagine the horror I've been through. Michael, I was thinking about something today. Vanessa released herself from the man's embrace. You and I rushed into a serious relationship yesterday. We don't know anything about each other, Vanessa said. Ask the girl's lover quickly replied. I'm ready to answer your questions honestly and without deceit. Do you have a family? No family, Michael said. There was a girlfriend, but she and I broke up not too long ago. Like not too long ago this morning, he admitted. When I woke up, the first thing I did was call my girlfriend to explain myself to her honestly. It would have been total piggish of me to cheat on her further. "So I'm the culprit behind your breakup?" the girl asked directly. "Let's just say you were the final straw in my decision," Michael sighed. "I've been coming to this for a long time. I didn't mean to." "Vanessa, my girl, it's absolutely not your fault," the man hugged the girl. "On the contrary, I am grateful to fate for bringing you into my life." You realized that in such a short time. Vanessa smiled. Sometimes just a moment is enough to realize that the man kissed Vanessa. The girl felt dizzy from Michael's hot kiss. At that moment, Vanessa's phone rang. Looking at the caller's name, the girl frowned. "Mum, hi," Vanessa said anxiously. "Is something wrong?" "I just wanted to see how you were doing," Mrs. Catherine said in a fallen tone. "I'm doing fine," cautiously replied the girl. "And you?" "And US," repeated the woman. "When are you coming back?" "Mother, I'll be here in a fortnight." "You know I forgot." Mrs. Catherine shrugged her shoulders. "Jessica was dumped by her young man." "Dumped how?" "Said their relationship had exhausted itself and they would now go their separate ways." "Why is Sister Jessica crying? Can't get over it." "Because she had plans for him," Vanessa grinned. "Like what?" "Like what?" Mrs. Catherine became indignant. "Jessica was going to marry him and he knew about it." "That's always you," she raged. "Your sister feels bad and you." "I'm just being realistic about things," the girl objected. "My sister is always rushing into decisions," Vanessa said, "and you support her in that." "Daughter, she just wanted to be happy." "Mum, tell your sister that things will work out," the girl replied. "I know what I'm saying myself. Got over it 6 months ago." "When will you be free?" "Call Jessica. Talk to her." "Okay, Mum," she promised. "That's it. I kiss you. Bye." Switching off the phone, Vanessa turned to Michael. She decided that since fate had given her such a gift in the form of Michael, she would not resist but accept it. Things happen in life. Maybe Michael is really her man, with whom she will live the rest of her life. 2 weeks flew by like a blink of an eye. Vanessa, packing her things, cried in her hotel room. "Stupid move," she said. "What about you?" Michael walked over to the girl and hugged her tightly. "I don't want to break up," Vanessa whispered through her tears, snuggling up to her lover. "Did I say anything about breaking up?" The man was surprised. "On the contrary, we're just getting started." "Really?" the girl asked hopefully. "Yes, in the first place you have met my family." "And in the second place?" Vanessa asked with interest. "And secondly, you're coming to visit me and we're getting ready for the wedding." "So soon?" stupefied the girl. "Why procrastinate?" Michael shrugged. "We love each other. But you don't know me at all. The main thing is that we have feelings, and we'll get to know each other in the course of married life." Vanessa continued packing. She was happy and felt like the heroine of a love film where all relationships end with a happy ending. What else does one need to be happy? She loves and is loved, and the rest, as they say, will come. Vanessa was only worried about one thing: how her parents would look at it. Would they approve of such a quick relationship of the eldest daughter? Michael, as if sensing his beloved's worries, hugged her tightly. "Don't be afraid, Vanessa. I'm with you." "I'm with you," the man kissed the girl on the cheek. "And together you and I can withstand all adversity." Vanessa looked at Michael gratefully. How good it was that he understood and accepted her with all her joys and problems. The following evening, Vanessa was home. She entered the flat and set her suitcase on the floor. "I'm home," she shouted. At her daughter's shout, Mrs. Catherine came out of the kitchen. "Daughter." "Thank God," the woman hugged the girl. How have I missed you? Oh, how you've lost weight, Mrs. Catherine splashed her hands, looking over Vanessa. Mummy, I've missed you too, Vanessa kissed the woman on the cheek. How are you two doing? How's your sister? Oh, don't ask, Mrs. Catherine's cheerful mood faded. A fortnight to walk about as if we were dipped in water. The women proceeded to the kitchen, where the mother set about organizing the tea party. Poor Jessica sympathized the girl. Haven't you made up with your boyfriend? No, I've talked to him on the phone so many times and he won't talk back. What did they fight about? Did he find someone else, said the woman sadly. Now she sits in her room all day crying. Mum, how many times have I told you Jessica needs to get a job, Vanessa said judgmentally. Then she wouldn't have time to sit around crying. When I broke up with my ex, I plunged straight into work. It pulled me out of my depression fast. Vanessa stopped talking abruptly. She hadn't planned to speak before the time. She wanted to start by preparing her parents for her meeting with Michael. So, sweet daughter, said Mrs. Catherine began. Now speak. She looked intently at Vanessa. What now? Suddenly everything. Oh, Mum. I'm so happy, the girl smiled. I met a man on a business trip. Can you imagine? Michael is from our town. We were with him all those 2 weeks together. I fell in love like a girl. He's so Vanessa hesitated. Mum, I'm getting married. What? How can you get married so soon? Mrs. Catherine was taken aback. Oh, Sis is here, said Jessica in a colorless voice, coming into the kitchen. How was the trip? I'm marrying Vanessa began. Good, she's moved out, Mrs. Catherine interrupted her sharply. I see, Jessica replied. So stop walking. Vanessa was glowing with happiness and wanted to share it with everyone. You're a young and beautiful girl. Stop killing yourself over your ex. Easy for you to say, Jessica grinned. You're an independent person. What's stopping you from becoming one? The older sister puzzled. Get yourself a job. Start realizing yourself. And what, Vanessa, is your sister telling you that sensible? Mrs. Catherine supported her eldest daughter. Where am I going to get a job now? Finish up. Jessica. Will Vanessa help you? Said the woman in a firm tone. I'll certainly help. The girl was taken aback. But there you go. Mrs. Catherine was at a loss for words. And life is slowly getting better. Yes, Vanessa looked at her family. She suddenly realized that her mother had smoothly shifted the responsibility of getting Jessica a job onto her eldest daughter's shoulders. Only where Vanessa should find a job for Jessica, Mrs. Catherine didn't say. The girl sighed. Well, initiative is punishable. Vanessa did not know how to help her sister in finding a job, because Jessica herself did not take any action in this direction. You see, honey, I realize it's my own fault, the girl complained to Michael when they saw each other in the evening. If I don't help my sister find a job, then I'm to blame for her unrealized potential. Vanessa, Michael said in a firm tone. I realize you're the older sister, but you're not going to be wiping her tears away all the time. You're right, Vanessa lowered her eyes. But I promised I'd help. Only here's how. Listen, what's your sister's profession? The man asked, suddenly hesitating. She's a manager. That is, an experienced computer user, he added. It seems to me that I can help you. Our company is laying off a girl who worked as an assistant to the deputy director. To put it simply, we need a secretary. And if anything, I can put in a good word with the bosses. There was hope in the girl's eyes, but her previous relief, she didn't even doubt that Jessica would be hired for the position. Really, Michael laughed. He liked his girlfriend's childlike directness. He'll tell Vanessa about it. Have her come up to our HR department tomorrow for an interview. I love you, the girl kissed the man. How lucky was she to have Michael after all? The next morning, Vanessa had to take time off work as Jessica refused to go to the company where Michael works alone. Vanessa's mood was ruined. "Sis, come with me," Jessica begged. "You know everything and I'm a knucklehead. I'm bound to get something wrong." "Yes, daughter, go with her," pleaded Mrs. Catherine. "Support her in her time of need." "Wait, you both think I have nothing better to do at work," Vanessa said indignantly. "I've got more than enough work to do after my business trip." "We know what you did on your business trip," the mother looked at her daughter meaningfully. Mum, Vanessa glared angrily at the woman. "Why don't you go out with Jessica? You're staying home anyway." "I'm at home working, by the way, not sitting around," Mrs. Catherine said in an admonishing tone. "I have the hard job of keeping my family together." "Mum, you can drop your pots and pans for a couple of hours, can't you?" Vanessa said in a fallen tone. "Nothing will happen to them." "Okay, this conversation is over," the woman said in a tone that tolerated no objection. "All the more reason to see where your fiancé works." "Who works?" Jessica was taken aback. "And why don't I know anything?" "I'll tell you all about it later," Vanessa said quickly. She didn't want to upset Jessica unnecessarily. "Pack up and let's go." The girls pulled up to the building where Michael worked. They arrived at the reception desk at the appointed time, where a human resources specialist was already waiting for them. The young man led them to the department where Jessica would tentatively be working. As they passed one of the offices, Vanessa heard a familiar voice. "Kimberly, understand, you and I broke up," shouted Michael. "A personal relationship ended between us, not an employment relationship. If you choose to quit, that's your business. I'm not going to keep you." "You'll regret it," a female voice whispered angrily. "I won't leave it that way." At that moment, the office door opened abruptly and a pretty blonde woman flew out at Vanessa. "Stand back," she commanded. Vanessa took a step to the side, letting the scandalized woman pass. She then shifted her questioning gaze to Michael, who stood red with embarrassment and glared at his girlfriend. Michael, seeing Vanessa, was embarrassed. He didn't want anyone to see this ugly scene made by his ex-girlfriend. "Vanessa, hello honey," the man walked over to the girl and kissed her. "I'll explain everything to you in a moment." "Michael, I've already figured it out," the girl was in shock. "Let's get acquainted. This is my sister Jessica." "Nice to meet you, Michael," Michael replied. He cared what Vanessa thought of him. "How interesting is it here?" Jessica smiled wryly. "If I'm not mistaken, you're here for employment," the man retorted stiffly and glared menacingly at Vanessa's sister. "Yes," Jessica said, confused. "Then go as ordered," Michael told them in a tone of voice. The man then looked at the specialist who was escorting the sisters to human resources. "Ashley, escort this girl to her destination." "Whatever you say," Michael, the young man, responded. "Jessica, come on through." "I'll wait for you downstairs," Vanessa shouted after her. She was in shock as she had never seen her man in such a state. "Vanessa, I suggest we go to the cafe and talk it over," the man put his arm around the girl's shoulders. "Okay," Vanessa agreed. Michael led his girlfriend to the cafe, which was located next to the company where he worked. In all this time, Vanessa hadn't uttered a word. "Honey, what kind of coffee do you want?" "Latte with banana syrup," Michael, having ordered, led Vanessa to a table near the window. The design of the cafe was made in beige-pink colors. Its creators managed to embody the environment for a serene, pleasant rest. And the cooks tried to make the food tasty, so that the guests returned to this cafe more than once. Taking a seat on the soft and cozy sofas, Vanessa looked at her companion carefully. "I want to apologize for that ugly scene you witnessed," the man said. He was the same old Michael again, soft and kind, the one Vanessa had fallen in love with. I'm against office romances, and yet I had an affair with my secretary. The girl grinned. Yeah, but she was my girlfriend first. Here's how it was. I met Kimberly when she was at university. She won my heart immediately. Beautiful, confident, Kimberly was the fulfillment of men's fantasies. Many of the young men at our university were crazy about her, myself included. Vanessa was uncomfortable with Michael's confession, but she realized that Kimberly was a man's past and there was no getting away from it. She took a big sip of coffee, thus burning her throat, but the girl didn't even notice it. After graduation, I quickly found a job. Michael continued. And Kimberly, despite her sharp and analytical mind, couldn't get a job for a long time. It pissed her off a lot. So I offered to help her and arrange for her to join our company. I thought it was romantic to work and live together. You live together? Vanessa was taken aback. Yes, at one point Kimberly didn't have the money to pay for rented accommodation. That's when I suggested she move in with me. I see, the girl muttered in a fallen tone. Vanessa had never been jealous, but now she was simply overwhelmed by the feeling. It seemed silly to be jealous of the past, but Vanessa couldn't help herself. We were fine at first, Michael continued. He, seeing that his girlfriend was uncomfortable with his revelations but determined to tell the whole truth. It was better to relive the unpleasant moments now than to revisit the subject every time. But gradually Kimberly began to demand impossible things from me. For example, she wanted in ultimatum form a bonus equal to the cost of a new fur coat or a salary increase because she can't afford to fly to Europe to go shopping. Wow, the more Vanessa learned the details of the past relationship, the more shocked she became. If I didn't fulfill her every whim, Kimberly would have fits of uncontrollable anger. She could smash anything she could get her hands on. At times like that, it was best to stay away from her. I felt guilty towards Kimberly because I couldn't give her the life she wanted. Our relationship began to wane. Kimberly could afford to stay out all night without giving me a reason for her absences. At first I tried to get the relationship back on track, but as it turned out, it was futile. Kimberly didn't need that either. Our sick relationship lasted exactly until I met you. When Kimberly found out about you, it was like she went crazy. She screamed, begged me to come back, blackmailed me into leaving you and going back to her. And you, Vanessa asked with bated breath. And I love you, the man kissed the girl's hand. At that moment, Jessica walked into the cafe. She took a seat at the table next to Vanessa. Yeah, sis, you hit the jackpot, Jessica grinned. Vanessa looked at her sister in surprise. What do you mean? Vanessa, are you either a complete fool who doesn't even know her fiancé or a cunning schemer who is hiding the truth? Jessica smiled evasively. Michael, do you know what she's talking about? Vanessa looked at the man questioningly. Not really, Michael shrugged. All the important aspects of my life, you know. You're a joker, though, Jessica said in a mysterious tone. What on earth is going on? Vanessa became indignant. Do you know why I had no problem getting hired by the company your man works for? Jessica asked and looked at her sister carefully. Girl, that's none of your business, Michael retorted sharply. He was angry at Jessica for prying into his business. Vanessa was confused. She didn't understand the reason for the man's irritation, but the fact that Michael didn't want her to know the truth was obvious. If that was the case, then what was he hiding from her? No, Michael, it concerns you now, Jessica continued caustically. Against the backdrop of recent events, namely being dumped by her fiancé, the girl was happy that her sister's man wasn't who he said he was. And most importantly, that he hides the truth from Vanessa. So he doesn't trust her. The thing is that your man is not just a specialist in this company, but it's heir, Jessica said. What do you mean heir? Vanessa was stunned. The company belongs to my grandfather, Michael admitted. but I don't consider the company my own. I'm just an employee like 1,000 others. And you mean you don't have any privileges? Jessica wondered. How is it that a direct heir has no privileges? No, on the contrary, I'm demanded more than the other employees, Michael said. I always have to prove that I am kept in the company because of my knowledge and skills, not because of a favor. I work 10 to 12 hours a day just because I'm my grandfather's grandson. God, it's hard on you, Vanessa whispered. Okay, why did you hide your relationship with the director of the company first? Jessica asked. What's the point of bragging about something that doesn't belong to you? Michael answered the question with a question with a question. I agree with you, Vanessa smiled. You're an idiot, Vanessa. Jessica glared at him. Why? Michael and Vanessa asked at the same time. Just stupid. That's all. Jessica glanced defiantly at her watch. Okay, well, I have to go. I have so much to do. I won't keep you any longer. Jessica stood up and left the cafe with a quick step. Michael looked at Vanessa carefully. Honey, are you really not angry that I didn't tell you anything about Grandpa's company? I am. Vanessa smiled. You're absolutely right about it not being your company. It's so good to have met you. Michael felt a sense of relief. The last secret of his life was now known to his beloved. Why don't we go for a walk? Suggested the girl. That's a great idea, the man smiled. The couple left the cafe. They walked slowly along the streets, enjoying each other's company. Michael looked at Vanessa, and his heart rejoiced. At last he had met the one and only, with whom he would not be afraid to start a family. Michael could talk to Vanessa about any topic that he cared about. Suddenly, a young man approached Vanessa and embraced her in a masterly manner. Vanessa, darling. I've missed you so much, he said. Vanessa looked at the young man with the look of a hunted animal. Why had he come into her life again? What do you want from me? She asked, freeing herself from the clinging embrace of Anthony, her former young man. Oof, Vanessa, what a tone. The young man smiled cheekily. I came to you. And you, sweetheart. Who is this? Michael asked. He was unpleasant that some stranger was behaving unceremoniously with his favorite girl. Who are you to call Vanessa nice? Anthony took offense, especially in my presence. Stop it, Vanessa said indignantly. She had finally recovered from the shock of seeing her ex unexpectedly. Vanessa and Anthony had been together for 3 years. The girl loved him more than anything in the world and forgave him a lot. It so happened that the young man has always lived in his own pleasure. In his 28 years of labor experience, he has only 1.5 years. And why should he work hard when women support him? First his mom, then he got off her neck and moved on to Vanessa. The girl loved Anthony so much that she didn't give it a second thought. The young man persistently pretended to look for a job. After various interviews, he realized that all employers did not see him as a genius and offered him positions much lower than he deserved. Vanessa was supportive of her lover. She was hurt that he was not appreciated. Anthony indulged in idleness all day long, waiting for Vanessa from work. Therefore, he quickly found a way out for a pleasant pastime, began to go to clubs and bars, and accordingly pull money from Vanessa. After all, this is not a cheap pleasure. And that the girl did not suspect anything, Anthony quickly came up with a legend for her. Allegedly, he and his friend opened their own business, and for this they needed money. Vanessa, being in rose-colored glasses from love, provided her lover with money. Anthony was happy, because with Vanessa's money he could go to clubs and meet other girls. How long it would have lasted it is unknown, if at one fine moment in the club Anthony did not meet the daughter of a big businessman. The young man immediately realized that Vanessa is a ballast that needs to be dropped. Therefore he, without regret, said goodbye to the girl. After all, with the daughter of a businessman, he has much more tempting prospects both in career growth and financially. For Vanessa, it was a terrible blow. She was covered with depression. Then the girl decided to hit the work. Her labors quickly paid off. 3 months later, she was promoted. Thanks to this, she was sent on a business trip where she met Michael. Vanessa, why are you so glum? Anthony smirked cheekily. Aren't you happy to see me? No, you're a past that should stay in the past, the girl replied. Vanessa then looked at Michael, smiled at him and asked, Shall we go? Vanessa, what are you doing? Anthony was taken aback. I want to come back to you. And where is the love of your life, for whom you left me? Did she leave you? The girl asked wryly. Would you believe it? Began to justify the young man. She turned out to be such a bitch. She was having fun on her father's money. And I have to pay for myself. And you, of course, it does not suit you. Vanessa continued to mock. Have you changed? Anthony was taken aback. Although I like you better like this. You finally got some backbone in you. Young man, in case you haven't noticed, Vanessa doesn't want to talk to you, Michael said stiffly. Who the hell are you anyway? Anthony asked defiantly. Vanessa, is this your new boyfriend? Isn't he a little old for you? Be careful where you turn, Michael warned her. I'm sorry, Anthony replied wryly. You're right, old age should be respected. Anthony, would you get out of here? Vanessa ordered. I love Michael. Jessica was right that you became arrogant when you got yourself a rich man, Anthony said angrily. Who was right? Vanessa was stunned. Really? The meeting with the girl's ex-boyfriend was because of her sister. Just why would Jessica want to do that? Arriving home, Vanessa's first instinct was to clear things up with her sister. She entered her room without knocking. Jessica, can you explain to me clearly what kind of circus you made in the cafe? Vanessa said in a harsh tone. I don't know what you mean, the girl made an angelic expression on her face and clapped her eyes shut. I mean the way you tried to expose Michael's position in the company, the older sister continued without changing the sharpness of her tone. I just don't like it when they make a fool of you. Jessica pouted, playfully offended. Jessica, I know you well, Vanessa grinned. And these grimaces of yours won't work on me. First of all. And secondly, my relationship with my man is none of your business. Do you understand? You have to realize that Michael is hiding something from you. Otherwise, he would have told you that he owns the company. Not him, but my grandfather. Vanessa's tone was as hard as steel. And besides, what makes you think I don't know? Did you know? Jessica was stunned. Yes, the older sister lied in a confident tone. Michael and I have no secrets from each other. I couldn't tell from the look on your face when you told me, Jessica said thoughtfully. It was surprised. It was surprised that you decided to meddle in my relationship, Vanessa countered. I meant well. If you really wanted it that way, you wouldn't have told Anthony about my new relationship. I met him by accident. Jessica started to justify herself. He said, How are you doing? I told him everything. I didn't mean to. I can see by the look on your face that you did it on purpose. Vanessa raised her voice. Remember, if you ever do anything like that again, you're on your own. The girl left her little sister's room, slamming the door. She hoped that Jessica understood her and would no longer interfere in Vanessa's private life. A month passed. Vanessa was dating Michael. Their relationship was so perfect that the girl began to fear that at one point it might burst like a soap bubble. Jessica worked in a company headed by Michael's grandfather. Despite the girl's efforts, her boss was not happy with her. Today, Michael had complained about her to Vanessa. You see, Jessica's job was to prepare a package of documents for signing a lucrative contract, Michael explained, walking with Vanessa in the park after dinner at the restaurant. But that's slacker. I'm sorry, but I can't call her anything else. Vanessa sighed sadly. She understood Michael's resentment. But Jessica was her sister, and it was a shame that her employer felt that way about her. She got the name of the company we're signing the contract with wrong, the man continued. Not only that, but there are a lot of mistakes in the text. Well, we noticed it in time and corrected it quickly. How shameful, Vanessa said quietly, her cheeks flaming. The girl took her work very seriously and never allowed a careless attitude. That's why her superiors valued her so much as an employee. Why doesn't Jessica have that drive to be the best? Kevin, the head of the department where she works, gave her one last chance. If she doesn't improve, we're going to have to let her go. Okay, I'll talk to her, Vanessa promised. When Vanessa got home that evening, she went straight to Jessica's room. She was sitting on her bed, browsing social media. Vanessa grabbed a book from the shelf and walked over to her sister. "What do you want?" Jessica asked rudely. Without saying a word, Vanessa took the phone from her sister and handed the book over. "Hey, what are you doing?" Jessica said indignantly. She quickly jumped off the bed and glared indignantly at Vanessa. At her youngest daughter's screams, the girl's mother came running in from the kitchen. "What's going on here?" "What's going on?" Mrs. Catherine asked. "I want your Jessica to start reading books," Vanessa replied. "Why?" Mom asked. "And because she almost blew a lucrative contract today because of her inattention and illiteracy." "Is your Michael picking on me?" Jessica cried. "So he's trying to smear me. Why would he do that?" Vanessa was taken aback. "Why would he do that? Why would he hit on me?" "I told him no," Jessica said, and cried even harder. Vanessa looked at her sister carefully. How could Jessica stoop to lying, and yet she could calmly accuse an innocent person of such an indecent act? "What do you mean?" the girl asked. "It's that your Michael was hitting on me," Jessica shouted. She started pacing around the room and breaking her arms. "And I turned him down. Then he told me that if I didn't have him, I'd be fired from my job." And he laughed so nasty. "Well, daughter, you've made a mess of things." Mrs. Catherine looked disapprovingly at Vanessa and shook her head. The girl felt dizzy with excitement. Doesn't her mother see that Jessica made this spectacle on purpose to smear Michael? "You got your sister a job with that monster," her mother accused. She walked over to her youngest daughter and hugged her. Feeling supported, Jessica burst into tears even harder. "Be quiet, my girl," her mother said firmly. "I don't believe it. Michael is not like that. I know he isn't." "Are you trying to tell me I'm lying?" Jessica screamed hysterically through her tears. "Well, something like that," Vanessa replied defiantly. She decided that Jessica had accused Michael without reason, because the man had never once given her reason to doubt him. Her little sister, on the other hand, was a flirt. "Oh yes." Jessica was angry. Her tears dried quickly, as if the tantrum had never happened. She jumped out of bed and ran up to her sister. Her eyes blazed with hatred. "Then tell me why I should do this." "To make me doubt my man's honesty. We'd fight, and one day Michael would leave me, and you'd be free to take my place." "I don't want your Michael," Jessica poked him. "Then why are you flaunting your charms in front of him?" Vanessa grinned. "Michael told me everything. How you tried to seduce him." "Vanessa, what are you talking about?" Mrs. Catherine reacted sharply, stunned. standing up and looking at her two daughters. The truth, Mummy Vanessa sighed sadly. Jessica has been going to work for a month, and at the same time purposefully seducing my man. Did your Michael tell you that? Jessica laughed hysterically. He's a hedge. Well, you should know that he's lying to you. He might be lying. But the cameras. Vanessa stopped talking. She decided to go for the deception and catch her sister in a lie. Jessica would panic and give herself away. What cameras? Catherine was stunned. Did this guy film himself molesting my daughter? No, Mom. The company has cameras in all the offices and corridors for security reasons, which record not only video but also sound. I haven't seen any cameras, Jessica said hesitantly. That's because they're hidden. Vanessa continued to play her part. She realized that if she lost now, her relationship with Michael would be in trouble. His mother would brand him a womanizer and a pervert forever. There's some pretty cool videos of your little girl acting like a little girl of easy virtue. Jessica, is it true? The mother asked quietly. She didn't expect her daughter to behave like that. Yes, Jessica shouted defiantly. It's true. But why did you do it? Mrs. Catherine continued to inquire. The woman could not conceive how her Jessica could have done such a thing, trying to seduce her sister's man. Why? Jessica asked defiantly. I want to be a rich man's wife too. Why was Vanessa so lucky in life? What did she do to deserve it? I'm 100 times more beautiful than she is. I go back and forth in front of him. I smile. I make eyes at him. He doesn't pay any attention to me. Maybe it's because he loves me. Vanessa asked quietly. Have you ever thought about that? To hell with love, Jessica. You can't do that. The woman tried to calm her youngest daughter. You can have many suitors, and you only have one sister? Mom, what are you talking about? Jessica frowned. There are no sisters or brothers in this kind of business. It's every man for himself, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure Michael is mine. God, Vanessa was stunned by the words her sister said. Does Jessica really think so? At that moment, the phone rang. Vanessa looked at the display and smiled. Yes, honey, I'm listening to you, she said in an affectionate tone. Hello, darling. She heard her lover's voice in the distance. I want to warn you that I urgently needed. At that moment, the voice cut off. Hello, Michael. Vanessa shouted into the receiver. My love, can you hear me? The girl heard the voice of her beloved again. Yes, I left the city for a while and now I'm driving on the motorway. Do not call yet. Why? So it is necessary. Michael replied harshly. As it will be possible, I will let you know about me. I love you. At that moment, there was a loud bang in the receiver. And then there was silence. The man's phone was switched off. Michael. Michael. Vanessa shouted loudly. But her answer was a ringing silence. She cried and dialed Michael's number relentlessly, but silence was the answer. Vanessa, what's wrong? Mrs. Catherine asked excitedly. It was the first time she had seen her eldest daughter in such hysterics. Usually emotionally reserved Vanessa never showed her feelings in public, trying to hide what she was experiencing. Michael is in trouble, the girl shouted. He said he had to leave on business. And then there was a bang, like his car had hit something. Maybe his phone fell in the car. Jessica suggested. She was startled by her sister's reaction. Then why wasn't he answering? Why is there silence on the phone? Vanessa shouted. Her imagination was painting horrible pictures of a car accident involving Michael. Her brain fought them off, but her heart believed he was all right. Things happened, Jessica shrugged, her younger sister. Could the phone be dead or broken? No, Vanessa shouted. I feel like something's wrong with it. Daughter, listen to me. It's all right. Mrs. Catherine tried to calm Vanessa down. Suddenly, the girl's phone rang. Hello, Michael, is that you? Vanessa screamed. No, it's not Michael, answered a confused male voice. Who is it? It's Kevin, Michael's friend. Kevin. Vanessa was stunned. Kevin, what's wrong with Michael? I don't know for sure yet, but he's obviously in trouble. Is he alive? The girl whispered, her hands trembling with shock. I don't know. I got a call that he was taken in a serious condition to a hospital in a neighboring town. What hospital? Vanessa fumbled around the flat looking for her papers, though they were all together in a desk drawer. But she couldn't think straight, her mind was all jumbled up. I'll go to him. Vanessa, I don't think that's a good idea, Kevin said hesitantly. You're not in the right state of mind right now. I'm the one who decides whether I'm in the wrong state or not, she shouted hysterically. Don't you realize that the man I love is lying alone, without me? You can't help Michael now, Kevin said. What hospital is he in? Vanessa said, emphasizing every word. At the district hospital, Kevin realized that nothing could stop her now. Will half an hour be enough time for you to get ready? He asked. For what? The girl was dumbfounded. I'll take you in the car. You're in such a state that you can't be left alone. If anything happens to you, Michael will rip my head off. Yeah, half an hour will do it. Switching off the phone, Vanessa picked up her traveling bag and started to pack for the road. Suddenly, she found a small souvenir magnet with a picture of the city where she and Michael met. The picture was of the city at night, with lilacs blooming in the foreground. Suddenly, Vanessa smelled that scent of love and the girl felt dizzy. She sat down on the floor and burst into tears, clutching the magnet in her hands. Vanessa, don't be sad. It was Jessica who said that. She gently stroked her sister's head. Everything's going to be all right with your Michael. Isn't he? Vanessa asked hopefully. It can't be otherwise. She waved her younger sister's hand. Life can't be so cruel as to separate two people who love each other so much. Do you think Michael loves me? Vanessa asked. He worships me. Jessica rolled her eyes. He has a picture of you on his desk in his office, and he looks at it often. And the girls in his department complained that he often confused their names by calling them Vanessa. Thank you, Vanessa hugged her sister tightly. For what? Jessica was stunned. For the truth. The girl quickly wiped away her tears. Can I come with you? Jessica asked timidly. Why? Vanessa was stunned. She stopped abruptly and looked at her sister. You see, I really like Kevin, and I want to get to know him better. What about Michael? Vanessa asked. You know, I was jealous that you got yourself such a rich man. I wanted to take your place. Kevin's a different story. Yeah, he's not as rich as yours, but he's handsome. Vanessa gave her sister a nasty look. Michael is in the hospital in a serious condition, and Jessica's only thought is how to arrange her personal life. Why was she so unlucky to have a younger sister? Vanessa made a firm decision not to take her sister with her, but Jessica wouldn't give up. Vanessa, well, can I go with you? The girl followed her sister and begged. No, the hospital is not a place for fun. Vanessa replied in a stern tone. Suddenly, the girl stopped abruptly and looked at her sister. She decided to trick her sister, especially since Kevin wouldn't be in the hospital all day. Where would he be? Jessica wondered. I think Michael is in another city on business, Vanessa said. So Kevin will be taking care of his business while his friend is in the hospital. I'll help him, Jessica said enthusiastically. She quickly got up from the couch she was sitting on before and walked over to Vanessa. The girl took Vanessa's hands and spoke quickly. He will realize that I am responsible and can be trusted. And that. Vanessa turned away from her sister and continued packing. How? What Jessica continued eagerly. He's going to fall in love with me. Are you normal? The older sister was outraged. She looked at Jessica carefully. His mate is in the hospital in a serious condition, and he has no time for romance. Wait until things are back to normal, then you can act on it. Oh, that's how you talk. Jessica was indignant. You've got a rich man for yourself, and you won't let me. Your incorrigible Vanessa shook her head. She glanced at her watch. All right, I've got to go. Kevin's probably waiting for me. Jessica silently went to her room without even saying goodbye to her sister. She was deeply resentful of Vanessa, whom she considered a traitor. After all, she found her happiness, and Jessica in every possible way prevents. No other than jealous of her beauty. After all, Vanessa from childhood was, let's say, not very attractive. But nothing. Jessica will still show herself, and Vanessa will regret that at one time did not help her. Vanessa, seeing that her sister was offended, but she had neither strength nor desire to calm Jessica down. There were more important things to do right now than her sister's resentments and ambitions. Saying goodbye to her mother, the girl went to her lover in the hospital. Coming out of the entrance, Vanessa saw Kevin, who stood waiting for the girl near the car. Next to him stood a short-height, cute blonde girl. I'm sorry, I'm a little late, Vanessa said. That's okay, the man smiled. Better late than never. Vanessa, let's be on a first-name basis. Okay. Vanessa. Listen, Kevin scratched the back of his head. Do you mind if my fiancé comes with us? No, of course not, she said happily. She felt a little awkward in Kevin's company. He seemed to Vanessa to be an arrogant and knowledgeable man. Great. Michael's friend Kevin rejoiced. This is Nicole. Nice to meet you, the blonde smiled. Vanessa liked Kevin's fiancée, and the girl breathed a sigh of relief. Shall we go? Kevin asked. The girls nodded silently. Nicole was a very pleasant person to talk to. She worked at the local museum as a researcher. Nicole's voice had a slight hypnotic power. When she told a story, Vanessa wanted to listen attentively. It didn't take long for Vanessa to fall asleep. She dreamt of Michael. He tenderly embraced the girl, saying affectionate words to her. The couple danced a slow dance. Michael was wearing a classic evening suit of ivory color, and Vanessa was wearing a long evening dress of peach color. Together, Vanessa and Michael looked harmonious. People stood around them and looked at the couple, admiring them. The man laughed mockingly. In this dream, Vanessa was infinitely happy. Suddenly, Michael's face was distorted by a grimace of pain. He screamed for Vanessa to do something to ease his suffering. The girl cried and screamed that there was nothing she could do to help her lover. Vanessa. The girl heard Nicole's affectionate voice through her sleep. Kevin's girlfriend quietly shook Vanessa's shoulder, trying to wake her up. Vanessa opened her eyes. She felt that her face was wet with tears. What's wrong? The girl asked. Did you have a nightmare? Nicole explained. You were screaming that you couldn't help him. I dreamt about Michael, and he was asking for help. He said he was in pain, Vanessa replied. Poor Michael, said Kevin, who had been sitting silently smoking the whole time. He must have been in a lot of pain when he was in the accident. Kevin, do you know exactly what happened to Michael? Vanessa asked. She still didn't know the truth about the accident. No, the man shook his head negatively. I was told that they don't talk about such details over the phone. I see, Vanessa, are you worried? Nicole asked. Can we move on? Vanessa asked. Of course, replied the girl. 5 hours later, Vanessa entered the hospital building, but a stern guard blocked her way. Where are you going, dearie? The man asked, his eyebrows drawn together menacingly. I'm Michael Brown's fiancée, Vanessa replied. He was brought in by ambulance after a traffic accident. You got yourself a fiancé, the man said in a firm tone. Office hours are over. Come back tomorrow. But can I at least talk to his doctor? Vanessa didn't back down. Do you think the doctor is not a human being? The guard reacted rudely. Everything is already at home. Come back tomorrow. The man turned away from the girl, making it clear that the conversation was over. Vanessa silently left the hospital. There was nothing left for her to do but wait for tomorrow morning. The next day, Vanessa was among the first visitors who came to check on their relatives and friends in the hospital. Who are you here to see? The guard asked sternly. Michael Brown, Vanessa said. She was impatient to meet her beloved. What are you, his fiancée? Not allowed, the guard said. The man took the phone and began to play a game, making it clear that the conversation was over. Why? Vanessa was confused. You're nothing to him, like nobody. As a nobody? She was indignant. I'm his fiancée. A fiancée is not a wife, the guard replied with irritation. These visitors, they can be so clingy. Today a fiancé, tomorrow a nobody. How do I get to the head doctor of your hospital? Vanessa decided that she wouldn't back down. She'd get to see her lover any way she could. Do you have an appointment with him? Without looking up from the phone, the man asked. No, why can't he see you without an appointment? For example, as an exception? No exceptions. The guard looked angrily at the girl. He almost passed the level in the game, which he could not pass for 3 days. But pesky, that lady was distracting him. Vanessa took a deep breath, trying to calm down. How do I make an appointment with the doctor? On the phone, the man mumbled. Which one? The girl didn't give up. I'm not an information bureau, so I have no idea, the guard said with a sneer. Although he knew the phone number of the head doctor of the hospital where he worked. But this girl did not let him pass this level in peace, so she should be punished. If I'm not mistaken, the sheet with all the phone numbers hangs on the wall behind your back, Vanessa said with a sly squint of her eyes. She thought to herself, No, mate, you've got the wrong guy. I'll do my best, but I'll see Michael tonight. Maybe it is, the man shrugged. I don't know. Well, turn round and look. At that moment, the guard's face stretched, and he quickly stood at attention. Vanessa didn't realize what had happened. Young lady, let me pass. Vanessa suddenly heard a man's voice behind her back. Turning round, the girl saw a tall, middle-aged man with a representative look. Tell me, do you know the phone number of the head doctor of this crazy hospital? Vanessa asked the stranger. Why do you need it? The man was surprised. I'm Michael Brown's fiancée. He was brought to you after a road accident, and they won't let me in without an appointment with the head doctor. Are you Vanessa? The stranger asked. Yes, the girl was confused. How does he know her? But I didn't tell you my name. Michael told me. The stranger smiled. I'm your fiancé's doctor and also the head of this crazy hospital, Mr. Terrence. I'm sorry, she blushed. She was ashamed of what she had said in the heat of anger. I didn't mean to offend you or the hospital. It's all right, the head doctor reassured her. I understand you're here to see your fiancé. Yes, but they won't let me in, Vanessa complained. Your guard said I'm nobody to Michael. What do you mean, nobody? Fiancé. Mr. Terrence was surprised. You can't let fiancés into the intensive care unit. The guard interjected. He was offended that his work was not appreciated because he was following instructions. But this girl is allowed, especially since she is with me. The head doctor winked at Vanessa. Why are we standing here? Don't you want to see Michael? Very much, Vanessa whispered. Her voice was gone with excitement. Then let's go. The girl went to the intensive care unit where Michael was lying. Vanessa was dressed in a medical gown, cap and mask. She waited for the head doctor, who went to his office to change. From impatience, the girl even began to stomp her foot. Finally, Mr. Terrence approached Vanessa. Shall we go? The man asked, looking directly into the girl's eyes. She only nodded her head in reply. Her heart raced like a caged bird. Just a little more and she would see her beloved. Entering the intensive care unit, Vanessa was numbed by the picture she saw. Michael was lying in front of her, hooked up to various machines. Usually confident and strong man was like a soulless mannequin, which was forgotten in the shop. Doctor, what's wrong with him? Vanessa asked, cold and terrified. Your fiancé's been in a terrible accident, the consequences of which may be unfortunate, answered the doctor. What kind of consequences? It's too early to tell, Mr. Terrence said thoughtfully. Michael's spine is damaged. So? Vanessa froze, expecting the worst. The chances of your fiancé ever getting back on his feet are slim, but very slim. It's going to take a long and difficult rehabilitation. I agree, Vanessa said in a firm tone. She made a decision for herself to help Michael and stay with him, regardless of whether he could walk again. 3 days passed and Michael still hadn't regained consciousness. Vanessa never left her lover's bedside. She sat beside him, holding his hand and talking to him. Honey, you can't imagine how warm it is outside, Vanessa smiled. Summer is in full swing. You're going to get better soon. We'll walk with you and enjoy each other. Can you imagine our park, where squirrels are jumping on the branches? They're very beautiful now. Their coats are red. In the sunshine, they shimmer like gold. And then we'll go to Chicago, where we spent our first 2 happy weeks. Mr. Terrence stood behind Vanessa and watched her. How lucky Michael is to have a bride. She won't leave him in his hour of need, he thought. Vanessa, you need to rest. The man approached the girl. You haven't slept well for 3 days. You leave late at night. Come back early in the morning. At this rate, you'll be exhausted in no time. Don't worry. Vanessa smiled back. She was grateful for the doctor's understanding. It's all right. As soon as Michael recovers, then. In the meantime, I have to be there for him. Imagine he'll come round and I won't be there, Vanessa said. At that moment, the girl's phone rang. She answered it. Hello, I'm listening. Is it your fault that Michael is now in intensive care? A hysterical female voice shouted. Vanessa tensed. She had heard it before, but she couldn't remember who it belonged to. What are you talking about? Vanessa was stunned. I wasn't even there when it happened. If you hadn't come into our lives, Michael would be alive and well right now, screamed the stranger. in your life. Like a parrot, repeated the girl. Suddenly it dawned on her that Kimberly, Michael's ex-girlfriend, was calling. What does this have to do with me and Michael's accident? And how did you get my phone number? I just said that, she answered quickly, realizing that she had said too much. Anyway, it's your fault. Now remember that for the rest of your life. Kimberly switched off the phone. Vanessa stared silently out the window, trying to digest the information. Vanessa, are you all right? Mr. Terrence, who had been in the intensive care unit all this time and had heard the conversation, put his hand on the girl's shoulder. Not really, she replied thoughtfully. Then Vanessa dialed Kevin's number and told him in detail about the phone conversation with Kimberly. Are you sure it was her? The man asked. Yes. By the way, I asked her how she got my phone number, and she didn't answer. Thank you for calling. Your information is very timely, Kevin praised. How's Michael? No change yet, she answered. Stay strong, mate. Michael is strong. Everything's going to be okay. See you tonight. Finished talking, Vanessa took her lover's hand in her own. You see, Michael, what a great friend you have. He and his girlfriend Nicole support me. Don't let me get discouraged. Mr. Terrence quietly left the intensive care unit, leaving the girl alone with her fiancé. In the evening, Vanessa walked into the flat that Kevin had rented to live in. Nicole was home alone. The girl was in the kitchen making dinner. Vanessa, hi, Nicole said excitedly. How's Michael? Still the same, Vanessa replied tiredly. Have a seat on the stool. She was mentally drained. Everything that doesn't kill us makes us stronger, Nicole winked at Vanessa. So eat dinner quickly, shower, and go to bed. No, I'm not having dinner. Yes, you are, Nicole commanded. Soon Michael would come to his senses and see not the beautiful girl he loved, but an exhausted one. At that moment, Kevin returned. His face was darker than a cloud. What happened? Nicole asked worriedly. It seems that an attempt has been made on Michael's life, Kevin replied. Nicole and Vanessa looked at each other. How could that be? Vanessa was dumbfounded. And who would want that?
I went to the local police today. A friend of mine works there, Kevin said, sitting down at the table.
What's next? Nicole asked impatiently. Are you guys going to feed me today? Jokingly, the man was indignant. I've been traveling around the city all day. I didn't even have time to eat lunch. That's why I'm hungry as a wolf. Unless you tell me what your friend told you, you won't get any food, Nicole gave him an ultimatum. No information, no dinner. Guys, stop fooling around. Vanessa asked. She used to be amused by Kevin and Nicole's jokes, so she could take her mind off Michael for a while. But now it annoyed her. Vanessa couldn't wait to hear what Kevin's friend had said. I'm sorry, we really got carried away, Kevin apologized. Anyway, I asked Ethan to look into the accident. He said they'd examined the car, but they hadn't found anything suspicious. Then why did you say that Michael had been attacked? Vanessa wondered. The thing is that Michael's blood contained the residue of a powerful sleeping pill. But Michael is a good sleeper, and he's never taken sleeping pills, Kevin explained. That's the point, he shrugged. Especially since, according to the results, he had taken them just before the trip. What the hell is that? Nicole was dumbfounded. Why did he need to take sleeping pills if he was going to go on a long journey? That's what gave the local operatives the right to believe that my friend had been assassinated, Kevin answered. Had Kimberly done it? Vanessa wondered aloud. At that moment, Vanessa received a phone call. She looked at the display and turned pale. Was it Mr. Terrence? She whispered. Her lips quivered with excitement. Answer it quickly. Nicole drummed her fingernails on the table with impatience. Just put me on speakerphone. I'm listening, Vanessa answered. Vanessa, come to the hospital immediately. Mr. Terrence ordered. What's wrong? Vanessa shouted, but the doctor had already ended the call. Hello. Hello, the girl continued to shout inertly. Kevin took the phone from her. He looked at Vanessa, then at Nicole. Okay, get ready quickly, the man ordered. What's wrong with Michael? Vanessa was getting hysterical. Why didn't the doctor say why he was calling her to the hospital? If you don't pull yourself together, you'll stay at home, Kevin said in a tone that did not tolerate any objections. Calm down. Vanessa slammed her eyes shut. She realized that there was nothing she could do to help Michael in his condition. I'm going to calm down, she whispered tearfully. I need to be strong. Good girl. Kevin smiled at her. Let's go. 20 minutes later, all three of them were walking into the hospital. When the security guard saw them, he quickly came out from behind his desk. What are you doing here? It's the middle of the night, he announced. What kind of nerve is it to come to the hospital late at night? I invited them, Mr. Terrence said as he came out of the corridor leading to the intensive care unit, giving the guard a stern look. Or should I have asked your permission first? No, you didn't, did you? The guard waved his hands. I'm just observing the regime of visiting patients. That's very commendable, the chief physician continued. But sometimes you need to step away from the protocol and be a human being first of all. But then it will be a mess, objected the guard. I said sometimes, Mr. Terrence put the argument to rest. Then he defiantly turned away from the guard, signaling that he had no intention of continuing this pointless argument. Vanessa, let's go, said Mr. Terrence. You young people wait in my office, there's a cooler. You can have coffee or tea. Thank you, Nicole, and Kevin said in unison. Doctor, tell me what happened. Vanessa asked with excitement. She quickly followed the head doctor into the intensive care unit. What's wrong with Michael? He's fine, Mr. Terrence replied, but he kept silent. He wanted the girl to see everything with her own eyes. Why don't you say anything? Vanessa didn't give up. Near the intensive care unit, a nurse helped the girl to dress in a medical gown and shoe covers with dexterous movements. Entering the room, Vanessa immediately went to the bed where Michael was lying. Halfway there, she stopped. Meeting the man's gaze, Vanessa screamed. Michael. She couldn't believe her happiness. Her man had come to his senses. Vanessa took a quick step and walked over to Michael, who was lying there smiling. He was happy to see his bride. My favorite. Vanessa cooed, kissing the man's face. Tears were flowing from her eyes. At last you have come to your senses. I'm so glad. Vanessa, Michael said hoarsely. The man wanted to hug his beloved, but his hands did not obey him. My darling, I wanted to hug you, but I have no strength at all. Michael, you just came to your senses, said Mr. Terrence, who stood nearby and watched the meeting. You need to be strong first. You'll have time to cuddle with your fiancé. Thank you very much, Mr. Terrence. Vanessa took the doctor's hand and squeezed it tightly. If it wasn't for you, there's no telling what would have happened to Michael. It's my job, the doctor faltered. Somehow he always felt awkward at times like this. It's just that you work as a wizard, Michael wheezed. Okay. I'll leave you alone for a while, Mr. Terrence said. Vanessa, you stay with your fiancé for another 5 minutes. I'll only be downstairs for 5 minutes. The girl was upset. Yes, he needs to rest, the doctor said admonishingly. The more he rests, the quicker he will recover. You're right, Vanessa sighed disappointedly. When the doctor left, Vanessa gently hugged her lover. Michael, how happy I am, she whispered. When I got the news that you had been in an accident, I almost went crazy. It was like the world had stopped. Everything was black and white. My girl, Michael said. Vanessa was confused. She wanted to know how the sleeping pills had got into the man's system, but she stopped herself. Mr. Terrence was right. Michael needs positive emotions right now to recover. Do you love me? Vanessa quickly blurted out. What came to mind? Very much. At that moment, a nurse entered the room and said that it was time for Vanessa to leave. The girl sighed sadly, kissed her lover, and went out into the lobby to the guard. Vanessa's friends and the doctor were waiting for her. What's wrong with Michael? Kevin asked when he saw the girl. Didn't Mr. Terrence tell you anything? Vanessa wondered. I wanted you to. The doctor smiled. Michael's awake, Vanessa said, happy, but she couldn't hide her joy. Yay, Kevin shouted and hugged Nicole tightly. Okay, young people, have a good one, Mr. Terrence said sternly, despite his good spirits. It's time for you to go home. Thank you so much for everything, Mr. Terrence, thanked Vanessa. Goodbye, Calais. All night Vanessa lay in bed. She couldn't sleep, thinking about the minutes she had spent with Michael. Emotions overwhelmed her. The girl replayed in her head every word spoken by her favorite man. Vanessa sighed happily. The most important thing was that the danger had passed, and now Michael was on the mend. Soon they would be home. At exactly 10, Vanessa was at the hospital. And it's you again, the guard muttered when he saw the girl. Why aren't you home? I thought your shift ended at 8. Yes, the shift attendant was ill and asked me to replace him, Vanessa said understandably and went to the intensive care unit. Vanessa, the guard shouted. The girl turned round and looked at the man questioningly. I wanted to apologize to you for my behavior. You know, a regime is a regime. I understand, Vanessa smiled. It's okay. The girl went to the man she loved more than anything else in the world. A month passed. Michael was discharged from the hospital. The man was on crutches, the spine was damaged, but the doctors gave a positive prognosis. With proper rehabilitation, Michael will be able to move around without crutches. Finally, we'll be home soon. Vanessa smiled. She snuggled up to her lover. The couple sat in the back seat in Kevin's car. Isn't it true what they say? It's good to be away, but home is better. Kevin smiled, looking in the rearview mirror. By the way, what about Kimberly? Nicole, who was sitting next to the driver, asked. She was charged with attempted murder of Michael, Kevin said. She didn't think it would turn out to be a violent accident. Michael felt sorry for his ex-lover. I instigated it before the business trip, Michael said. Kimberly called me and said we needed to have a serious talk. I made an appointment to meet at a cafe on the way out of town. Upon seeing me, Kimberly started crying that she couldn't be without me and loved me still. I abruptly cut the girl off, stating that I was in love with someone else. Kimberly retaliated by slipping sleeping pills into my coffee. She thought I'd fall asleep in the car, and she had no idea about my business trip and the consequences of her revenge. Michael, that doesn't excuse her, Nicole said. What if it had ended differently? Vanessa asked quietly. Her lips quivered. Hey, what's wrong, honey? Michael held his beloved tightly against him. I'm here for you and I'll never leave you. No force can separate me from you. You promise? I promise. It's true what they say. True love will survive all hardships and troubles. Michael and Vanessa's love was born when their souls became soulmates. In a town where the scent of lilacs wafted everywhere, the scent of love and happiness.